I know we talked about your engagement to David. When were you married?
August 16th, 2003.
And where was the wedding?
Waisaki's.
What's Waisaki's?
It's a place, a reception hall where they hold weddings and parties.
Was it a big wedding or a small wedding?
It was about 50, 60 people were there.
Were any members of David's family there?
No, there were not.
Do you know why?
David
Judge. I'll sustain him.
Where did you go on the honeymoon?
Las Vegas,
How long were you there?
10 days.
Did Ashley or Bree go with you?
No.
Now, when you were marrying David, I assume at some point you must have had a conversation with the girls that you were going to get married.
Yes.
When did you have that conversation?
September of the year before when we got engaged.
And what did you tell them?
David and I had gotten engaged and we were going to get married and we were planning a wedding.
Did they seem happy about that?
No.
Now, over the course of your relationship with David and during the marriage, did you spend a lot of time with his family?
None. No.
Did David spend a lot of time with his family?
No.
Over the entire time that you spent with David, from the time you met with him, how many times do you think he saw, or how many times do you know of that he saw his ex-wife or his son?
I saw his ex-wife in court a couple of times when they were finishing up their divorce. I saw his son twice at our house.
Now, did David have any friends?
Yes.
Who would be his best friend?
Bob Ross.
And did you get to know Bob Ross?
Yes, and his wife Cindy.
And did you all spend time together?
Yes, we did.
What kind of things would you do?
Go to the movies, go out to dinner, snowmobile.
Did you do it with other friends or just them?
Usually it was the two of us as couples.
Were the Colemans or the Pulaskis ever involved in these kinds of things?
Occasionally, all of us would go out to dinner together.
Now, over the course of the relationship before you were married, what did you observe about David's attitude towards your girls?
Before we got married, David appeared to be trying to build a relationship with the kids.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said he appeared to be trying to build a relationship with the girls.
Stacey, I'm not sure if the mic is on again, but just speak up a little bit if you could.
Can you tap that and see if it's on? It's on.
Okay. And did that attitude change after you were married?
Yes, it did.
Tell us how.
Before we got married, David participated in family things. We took the kids camping. They went out to dinner with us. When Bree had a function at school, she was on synchronized swimming and in chorus. He'd attend those functions. And then after we got married, that stopped.
You didn't attend any of their school functions at all?
No.
Did you attend either Bree or Ashley's graduation?
He attended Ashley's graduation.
Now, we heard some testimony about a celebration dinner for Bree regarding a math award. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember the testimony about how David behaved on that day?
Yes.
Do you have anything to add to what happened that day?
No, he really was not happy with the fact that we were having this dinner, that my mom was there, and he did not attend the award ceremony at school.
Now, what about the relationship between you and David? Can you describe that?
We had a very good relationship. We enjoyed each other's company. We did things together. When it was just the two of us, we had a lot of fun together.
Now, when you say just the two of us, what about when it wasn't just the two of you?
There was a lot of tension between David and the kids.
Do you know why?
He felt they didn't respect him. They felt he didn't respect them.
Was that, when you said it was a source of friction, did you ever argue about it?
David and I?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you ever argue about it in front of the girls?
No.
Would David ever discipline the girls?
He would try.
What would happen?
They'd get angry. They'd ignore him.
How did he react to that?
He would get very upset. He was an adult in their lives and an authority figure, and they should have obeyed him.
Well, at this time, it was his house, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And when you were married and living in Wetzel Road, can you tell us what the bedroom arrangements were, or the sleeping arrangements where everybody lived?
David and I slept in the master bedroom. There was a small bedroom across the hall from the bathroom where Bree slept, and Ashley's room was down in the basement.
When you say a room, what do you mean by a room?
Well, her bed and her dresser and all of her things were there, and we had put curtains up to enclose the area to make it like walls.
Did you ever try to make it a room?
No.
Why not?
Just never did it.
Now, you said that there was tension in your relationship with David because of the way the girls and him would sort of have tension, right?
Yes.
How often did you have arguments with David about that?
If David disciplined my kids or said something that I didn't think was appropriate, or he got upset over something that they did and I didn't think it was such a big deal, we would get into an argument then. I never, in front of the kids, corrected David, even if I felt he was wrong. If he disciplined one of the kids, he disciplined the kids. As an adult, they needed to learn that he was an authority figure in their life and that they should respect that simply because he was an adult. But if I didn't approve of it or I didn't agree with it, I would, behind closed doors, let him know that.
Now, what kind of things, or say, did you do anything to try to smooth these tensions over with the girls or with David?
At the beginning, I tried. I was stuck in the middle. He wouldn't give, they wouldn't give, so it was easier to just let them be at odds.
Did David treat the girls the same?
No.
What do you mean?
He appeared to be harder on Ashley than on Bree.
Do you know why?
Probably because Ashley was around more than Bree. Bree spent a lot of time at her friend's house. Bree was involved in activities that kept her from home. When we first moved in with David, Ashley didn't have a job. She did go to school, but she didn't really have a lot of friends that she'd go and hang out with or do things with. She basically was home most of the time.
Did the girls spend a lot of time away from home?
As David's and my relationship developed, yes. The older they got, the more time they spent away.
Why?
They weren't allowed to have their friends over at the house. So if they wanted to see their friends, they had to go to their friends' houses.
Was that your rule?
No, that was not.
Whose rule was it?
That was David's.
Did that ever cause any friction, or was that the source of any arguments?
Oh, yeah, a lot. It wasn't right and it wasn't fair, but it was his rule.
Now, I'll ask you this. If David was apparently not treating your children the way you thought was appropriate, why did you and the kids stick around?
I love David, and my kids were getting to be at an age where they were going to be moving on with their lives. They're growing up. Ashley was getting ready to graduate from high school. Bree was talking about when she graduated, moving off to college, moving out of state. And David and I were very compatible together. We enjoyed each other's company. We were like an old married couple that wasn't old yet.
At any time, were there any discussions about Ashley moving out?
Right after Ashley graduated, or around the time Ashley graduated, she was going to move in with her girlfriend, Connie Speech. Connie's parents owned some rental properties, and they were going to move into one of them together.
Did Ashley ever move in?
No.
Do you know if Ashley ever had a driver's license?
No, she's never had a driver's license.
Do you know why not?
She got her permit, and it took me a while for her to get her permit. I don't really know. She's just never had the ambition to get a driver's license.
Now, you said she had a job. Where did she work?
Wendy's.
And do you know when she started working at Wendy's?
In her junior year of high school, 2004.
Now, if she didn't have a car, how did she get to work?
Wendy's is right around the corner from our house, and that was part of the reason why she got a job there, because it was convenient for her to walk when I couldn't take her or pick her up.
And just, the jury may not be familiar with the area. Can you give them an idea of where your house is in relation to Wendy's and what the streets are like?
Our house was at the end of Wetzel Road, closest to 57, and Wendy's is in the Seneca Mall. So it was maybe a 5 or 10 minute walk.
Did you ever drive her to work?
Yes, when I could, when my schedule permitted.
Now, you said that your relationship with David was pretty good. Did you ever have any fights about anything else other than the kids?
No?
Now, in the 6 months or so leading up to David's death, would you describe the relationship between you and David as being the same?
Yeah, it was good.
What about his relationship with either Ashley or Bree or the both of them?
Their relationship came to a screeching halt and never got any better. They would be civil to each other because they had to be. They all lived in the same house. But David could walk into a room and not acknowledge the kids, wouldn't even look at them, would look through them. But the girls would do the same thing to him. So I think they agreed to disagree.
Did you and David ever go away together?
Sure, quite often.
Before he died, do you remember when the last time you went away together was?
It was in June we went four-wheeling.
And were the girls with you?
No.
Did the girls ever go with you when you went away?
In the beginning of our relationship, yes, but after we got married, no.
Why not?
David did not want to take them with him. He felt that they were ungrateful and disrespectful, and they didn't respect him, and he didn't want to take them with him.
Now, when you were married to David, were you still working at Rural Metro?
No, I left Rural Metro in October of 2000 and went to work for TLC Ambulance
And where was that?
on Burnett Ave in Syracuse.
How long did you work there?
From October of 2000 till September of 2002.
And did you have another job after that?
Yes,
Where did you work?
Liverpool Heating.
What's Liverpool Heating?
That was David's business.
Now, you said you worked there. Describe what the business was and what your job there was.
Liverpool Heating was a heating and air conditioning company. David owned it and had one employee. They installed furnaces and air conditioners, repaired furnaces and air conditioners, and I was the secretary. I answered the phone, scheduled appointments, took care of sales tax, mail, deposits, anything that happened during the course of a day for a business I took care of.
And how long after you got married did you start doing this?
I started working for David before we got married. I
Okay.
started working for him in 2002,
And
September.
Where's Liverpool Heating located?
About a mile down the road. It was located a mile down the road, Wetzel Road, from our house.
And did you have to go to work every day, drive down there, or?
No, one of the advantages of having a small business was that when the weather was bad or there wasn't a lot to do, we could transfer the company phones to the house phone and I could work from home.
Was there like some kind of home office in the house?
Yes.
And where was that?
It was on the other side of our bedroom, between Bree's room and our bedroom, in the corner of the house.
And after David died, whose bedroom did that end up being?
Bree's.
Now, being involved with the business, you must have gotten paid.
When I first started working for David, the first year that I worked for him, I received a paycheck every week. Once we got married, I got paid when there was money to pay me. If there wasn't money in the account, I didn't get paid. Before we got married, if he needed to borrow money on the company credit card to make payroll, he would do that. But after we got married, if there wasn't money in the account to cover payroll, I didn't get paid.
Wouldn't that have been a source of tension between the two of you?
No, we made it. I received Social Security for the girls. It covered the household expenses. It was one of the trade-offs of being able to work from home and having a small business and being close to my kids.
Do you know about how much you would earn working at Liverpool Heating?
Off the top of my head, I do not remember what my last income tax was.
Did you have joint checking accounts or anything like that?
No, I had a checking account that had David's name on it, but it was solely my checking account. I joined his credit union, and to become a member, he had to co-sign on my account.
Did you have access to the business accounts and the business checkbooks and those kind of things?
No, David was the only one that could write checks.
Now, tell us a little more about what you would do when you worked from home.
Answered the phones and scheduled appointments. Everything that I did at the office, I would do at home, and then I could do my housework and whatever else I needed to do at the house.
Now, I want to direct your attention specifically to the time around when David died, the week before. What was going on that week?
Tuesday was our wedding anniversary. It was actually David's mom's birthday, too. So instead of going out to dinner or doing anything, we went over to her house for her birthday. And we decided that that weekend we would celebrate our anniversary.
Did you have any other plans after that?
Well, the kids were gonna be gone for the weekend, so we could do anything we wanted. If we wanted to take off and go camping or go four-wheeling, just hang out, whatever we chose to do, we would be able to just do.
Were you thinking about a trip or something else afterwards?
The next week, David closed his business 4 weeks a year. He usually closed the last 2 weeks of April and the last 2 weeks of August because it was in between his busy seasons. During the week before David's death, he was working on a custom heating and air conditioning job in Fayetteville, Messina job, and he was having difficulties with it. And he was hoping to finish it on that Friday, which he did not, because we were planning on starting vacation the following Monday.
And was this vacation, was this something that you were going to do just by yourselves?
That was David's intention, but not mine.
Tell us what you mean.
We were going to be gone for pretty much that entire 2 weeks. And I really did not want to leave Bree and Ashley home alone for 2 weeks. Ashley was old enough and had a job where she wouldn't be able to just take off and leave. Bree was not, and I did not want to leave Bree in Ashley's care for 2 weeks. We were planning on going to the Fleetwood motorhome place in Indiana. I guess that's where they make them.
Why is that?
That was David's dream, to buy a motorhome and have it so that we could go wherever he wanted to go, take his toys and travel. And then he wanted to go to Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's an amusement park, all roller coasters. And
did you end up actually purchasing tickets or making some kind of flight arrangements or anything like that?
no, we wouldn't have flown, we would have drove.
Now, you said you had some plans for that weekend with David, and you were going to spend the weekend alone with him?
Yes.
How are you going to work that out with the girls living there?
They made arrangements to spend the night. Ashley was going to spend the Friday night and Saturday with Connie Speech, and Bree was at my sister's house. She babysat during the summer for my sister, generally from Thursday night to usually it could be Sunday or Monday. It depended on my sister's schedule.
And at this particular time, how old were Bree and Ashley?
Ashley was 18 and Bree was 14.
And when were these arrangements for the girls made?
Between Wednesday and Thursday.
Did you make them, or did they make them, or was it a joint effort?
They made their own arrangements, but I knew about them so I knew where they were going to be. Well, basically it was Ashley, because I already knew Bree was going to be babysitting for my sister. She had a schedule. But once Ashley knew where she was going to be, she let me know.
Did you tell the girls about that weekend?
Yeah, they knew that it was our anniversary and we were going to celebrate it.
Now, that particular Friday, were you working at home or were you working at the business?
I was working at home.
And was David working at home too?
No, he was in Fayetteville working on the Messina job.
And where were either Bree or Ashley on Friday?
Bree was at my sister's house, and Ashley was with her friend Connie Speech.
Now, is that earlier in the day or in the middle of the day?
That was up until, I believe Ashley got home about 3:30 that day.
How do you know she got home at 3:30? Did you pick her up?
No, someone dropped her off.
Now, on this particular weekend, when did you next see Bree?
I picked Bree up about 2:30 Saturday afternoon.
And you said you saw Ashley on Friday at about 3:30?
Yes.
And tell us about that. When did you see her? Or where did you see her? I'm sorry.
At home. I was in the kitchen getting things ready for dinner, and Ashley came home, walked into the kitchen.
And do you know if she had to work that day or anything?
Yes, she did.
What happened when she got home?
We talked for a little while. I was preparing things for dinner. I had purchased some macaroni salad at the deli, and she wanted to try it. It was some kind of new salad. And I let her have some. And we stood in the kitchen and talked for a little while. She was telling me about setting up the candy store at the fair and the restaurant at the fair.
And was David home at this time?
No, David got home about 4 o'clock.
And when he got home, what did he do?
He came in the house and went in the living room and sat down.
Now, you said came in the house, and you described Ash coming in the house. Did they come in the front door? How did they get in?
They came in the back door, which comes through the garage into the kitchen.
And why that door?
That's the door that we use to go in and out of the house.
And if you could describe for the jury sort of a layout of that area of the house, so they have an idea of what you're talking about.
You walked in through the garage. It's a one-car garage. Into the door, opens up into the kitchen. You walk through the kitchen and into the dining area, and immediately to the left was the living area.
And is the basement door around there?
Yes, when you walk into, as you walk into the house, the basement door was to the left, and the door to the sunroom was to the right.
Now, when David got home, where was Ashley?
In the kitchen with me.
And did you all have a conversation or talk with each other?
No, David went and sat down in the living room.
When you say sat down in the living room, what did he do?
He sat down in his chair in the living room, turned the TV on.
Do you remember what he was watching, if you do?
Probably Dr. Phil.
Why do you say that?
He liked that show.
Where was Ashley?
In the kitchen with me.
At some point, did you leave the kitchen?
Yes.
Where did you go?
I left the house.
Why did you do that?
I needed to go to the bank and to the post office.
Was that something that was unusual for you?
No, that was regular course of business for the company. I made the deposits at the bank, mailed certified return receipt letters. David did not like mailing the company mail from the house, so that was taken to the post office.
Was that something you would do every day?
Most every day, yes.
Now, on this particular day, do you remember whether you went to the bank or the post office, or the bank and the post office, or exactly what you did?
I know for sure I went to the post office because I had to mail a certified return receipt letter. I'm not positive if I went to the bank that day or not.
About how long do you think you were gone?
About a half an hour.
And when you got home, were Ashley and David still there?
David was, Ashley was not.
Do you know where she went?
To work.
How do you know she went to work?
Because she was supposed to be at work at 5 o'clock, and she wasn't home, so I assume she went to work.
How do you know she had to work at 5?
Because I knew her schedule, and she had told me what her, used to tell me every week what her schedule was.
Now, when you got back, where was David?
As I walked in the back door, he walked into the kitchen.
And did you guys have a conversation, or did you talk to each other about anything?
Yeah, he started telling me about his day, the job, the difficulties he was having. This custom job that he was doing turned out to be a lot more of a project than he thought it was originally going to be. And during the day, one of his other customers, a commercial account that has a rooftop air conditioner, was having a problem. And it's a business, so it had to be taken care of. So he had to leave his job in Fayetteville that he really wanted to get done on Friday and go take care of this business, which put a dent in his day. It took time away from the job that he wanted to get done.
Now, at this time when you got back, did you or David eat or drink anything, do you know?
David poured himself a glass of Southern Comfort.
Do you know if he'd been drinking anything earlier?
I don't know.
And did you have anything to drink?
No, I did not.
You said you were planning on having dinner. Did you keep working on dinner?
Yes. David finished his drink, poured himself another one. We went and sat down in the dining room, and I brought him some shrimp cocktail that I had made.
And what happened next?
David ate the shrimp cocktail and decided he wanted to lay down while I made dinner. So we walked down to the bedroom and we were talking. He lay down on the bed and I was rubbing his feet while we started to talk. And he had mentioned he asked me if I had thought about what I wanted to do while we were on vacation.
Was he still wearing his uniform? Had he changed?
No, he was still wearing his work uniform.
And you said you started to talk about a conversation you were having. Tell us about it.
About going on vacation,
Yes.
what I wanted to do.
Yes.
I kind of was trying to avoid this conversation because I knew it was going to be an argument, and I really did not want to have this argument, but he wouldn't let it go. So I told David that I was not going to go on vacation with him if he did not let Bree come with us.
And how did you react to that?
Not well at all. He got really angry. He wasn't going to let her go. And we proceeded to get into an argument about my kids and how they were ungrateful and I did too much for them. And all the usual things that we argued about when it came to the kids. David was really offended that I would not go on vacation with him if he wouldn't let Bree come.
Now, was this argument, so the jury has a sense, was it the same argument you'd had before? Was it more of an argument? Was it less? Give us an idea of what it was like.
Well, it was an argument about the kids. It was different in the fact that we were arguing about going on vacation, yet the same old issues about my kids and what they did and what they didn't do, how they treated him, how he felt about them. That was all involved in there. At one point, I decided I was just going to get up and go start dinner. I had had enough. So I walked out of the bedroom, and David followed me. And we were in the dining room, and the argument continued. And it basically did for the rest of the course of the evening. I never cooked dinner.
Why not?
Because we were arguing.
Did you ever have anything to eat?
Did I? No.
Do you know if David did?
He ate the shrimp cocktail earlier, but that was all he ate.
Did he eat anything else?
Not at that time, no.
Okay. And you said that he was drinking Southern Comfort. Do you know how much he had to drink?
He was drinking out of 8-ounce glasses. They were about 8 ounces, like about 4 or 5 inches tall. And the first one was almost completely full, and the second one was just a little less than full.
Did you actually see him pour the drinks?
Yes, I did.
And I'll ask you again, I'm not sure, did you have anything to drink, any of the Southern Comfort?
No, I don't drink Southern Comfort.
Did you have anything else to drink?
There was vodka in the house, but I didn't drink any.
Now, at some point, did you leave the house?
Yes, I did.
Why?
A little after 9, Ashley called me to come and pick her up at Wendy's and take her to Connie Speech's house.
And did you do that?
Yes, I did.
How long were you gone, do you think?
About a half an hour. We went through the village and there was repaving being done on some of the streets, so there was detours. It took me a little bit longer than I thought it would.
Did you get her to Connie's?
Yes, I did.
And did you come back to the house?
Yes, I did.
And what happened when you got back?
I walked into the living room and found my pillows on the couch.
Did you talk to David at that point?
I walked to the bedroom and tried to open the door, and it was locked.
Now, we've heard some discussions about this bedroom door being locked. How often would David lock the bedroom door?
Well, anytime we left the house, the bedroom door was locked. David and I had had arguments where he had locked me out of the bedroom before. So it's not that it was an everyday thing, but it wasn't an uncommon occurrence either.
You didn't have a key yourself to get in?
No, I did not.
Did you ever ask for one?
No.
Why not?
I didn't lock the bedroom door.
Now, you said that you were locked out of the bedroom door. Were you and David the only ones in the house at this point?
Yes.
And did you say anything to him through the door? Did you try to talk to him? I mean, what did you do?
I knocked on the door and called his name, and he turned the TV volume up.
And had that kind of thing ever happened before in your relationship?
Yes.
Now, what did you do after that?
I tried again. I tried one more time to get him to answer me, and he did not. So I went into the living room, grabbed my pillows, and laid down on the couch.
Now, when you drove Ashley to Connie's, did you talk to her about what was going on?
She had seen that I had been crying. She knew that I was upset and asked why, and I had told her that David and I had been arguing.
Now, back at the house, what did you do next?
What did I do next?
Yeah, you said he'd put your
My pillows out in the
pillows
living room.
outside the door.
They were in the living room on the love seat. I put them on the couch and laid down on the couch.
Did you end up falling asleep?
Eventually.
Do you know about what time that would have been?
No.
And did you sleep through the night?
No, I did not.
What happened?
About 4 o'clock, I woke up.
And why?
I woke up, I went out in the garage to have a cigarette.
Was that an unusual thing?
No.
When you had gotten up, did you happen to see the bottle of Southern Comfort or any other alcohol around?
The bottle of Absolute was still on the kitchen counter, but the Southern Comfort was gone.
Do you know where it went?
I assumed at that point that David had taken it into the bedroom with him.
Now, originally with that, did you buy that bottle new for that weekend?
Yes.
Now, you said you went out in the garage, had a cigarette. What happened out in the garage?
David came out in the garage.
Why were you smoking in the garage?
After we painted the house and remodeled the bedroom, we didn't smoke in the house anymore.
You said David came out. What happened?
He came walking out in the garage. He was carrying a glass of Pepsi, a Diet Pepsi, and he was staggering a little bit, and he came out and sat down and lit a cigarette, and we started talking. He was acting almost like he did not remember the argument that we had had prior.
How was he dressed?
He was in his robe.
Was that unusual?
No.
And do you know how you were dressed?
I had on a pair of sweatpants and a T-shirt.
Now, you said he was drinking a Diet Pepsi. Was that out of a bottle or a glass, a can?
He had a glass of it.
Did you give him that glass?
No, I did not.
Did you have anything to drink while you were in the garage?
I went and got myself a glass of Diet Pepsi after David wouldn't let me have some of his.
And what went on out in the garage when you were together?
We sat out there, and David, I would say that David and I talked, but I listened while David talked. David rambled for several hours about everything.
Were you guys arguing or fighting?
No. He would at times get loud and excited, but not screaming, not argumentative. He was just talking.
Did you notice anything else about his demeanor or his attitude, how he was behaving?
I thought he was drunk.
Why is that?
Well, because the way he was talking, he was rambling. He'd start talking about the stress of the business was going to kill him. His blood pressure was high. He didn't think he was going to live to be 65. The cell phones bothered him. If he got sick, what would we do? Because we didn't have health insurance. If he had a long illness.
Was there anything else that led you to think he was intoxicated?
He was slurring his speech a little bit.
Now, all this time you're listening to him, what are you doing?
Listening.
How long did this go on for?
About 7 hours.
Did you see him have anything else to drink from the Southern Comfort?
No. He did have the glass with what I thought to be Diet Pepsi in it.
Did you see him drink anything else other than that from that glass?
No.
Now, you said that you had something to drink, a Diet Pepsi as well, is that right?
Yes.
Tell us, where did you get it?
From the refrigerator in the kitchen.
Did you get anything else?
When I went in to get the glass of Diet Pepsi, David asked me to bring him something to eat.
What did you bring him?
Macaroni salad.
And you said you brought him macaroni salad. What, you just brought it out to the garage? Mm-hmm. Was it on a plate, in a pan? I mean, give the jury an
I
idea.
put some macaroni salad into a dish and got a fork and took it out to the garage with him. We had an area out in the garage with a couple of chairs and a little table with the ashtray on it where we would sit and smoke.
And did you have any of the macaroni salad?
No, I don't eat macaroni salad.
And you said this conversation went on for a long time. How long did it go on for?
About 7 hours.
About 11 o'clock in the morning, is that right?
Yep.
And what happened? How did the conversation end?
The phone rang. It was my daughter Bree wanting me to come and pick her up from my sister's house.
And what did you do?
Headed into the house, followed David down into the bedroom.
What did you see? What about his? You said that you thought he was intoxicated earlier.
Mm-hmm.
At the time when the call came in, what did you observe about his behavior or his condition?
When he walked in the house, he was staggering down the hall.
And where did he go?
To the bedroom.
What did you do?
Followed him to the bedroom.
And what did you do in the bedroom?
He took off his robe and laid down on the bed. I laid down next to him, and he started snoring a little bit. And he hadn't been asleep for very long when he sat up, leaned up on like his elbow and threw up all over himself.
Tell us what you did.
I got up and got a towel, cleaned up as much of it off of him as I could, helped him off the bed and into the bathroom, into the tub.
What were you thinking at this time?
He had too much to drink and he just got sick from eating macaroni salad.
I mean, did you get angry? Were you concerned? I mean, tell
I
us what
was
you
a
were
little upset. I have to admit that weekend that I was upset with David. We were supposed to be celebrating our anniversary, and he got drunk, and we got into a fight, and instead of having a good time, we had a very bad time.
And you said you helped him into the tub. What did you do?
Helped him into the bathroom. He got in the tub. I went back into the bedroom and stripped the sheets off the bed because
What did you do with him?
I folded him up and put him in the hamper.
And where was David while you were doing this?
In the bathtub in the main bathroom.
And what happened next?
I made the bed, and then I went into the bathroom and helped David. He was on his hands and knees in the bathtub. I was trying to rinse the soap out of his hair, so I helped him do that.
And you must have been having a conversation or talking to him at this time. What were you saying?
Just telling him he needed to get up out of the tub and go lay down. I asked him if he was okay. He said he was. He tried to stand up. Our bathtub didn't have the skid-resistant decal things in them. It was very slick. And he was having a problem standing in the tub and not. So he slipped a couple of times, but he never fell. So to make it easier for him to stand up, I put a towel down in the bathtub. He stood up, got out, dried off, went and got in bed.
Now, you said he eventually got into bed. What did you do?
I covered him up, kissed him on the forehead, and went and picked up my daughter.
Now, all this started happening around Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and now we're into sort of Saturday. Mm-hmm. And it's several hours later. at this point, did you have any concern about what was going on with David?
No, I just assumed that he had had too much to drink.
Had you ever seen him drinking before?
Yes, and I had seen him drunk before. I will admit not that drunk, but I had seen him drunk before.
You said he wasn't that drunk. Was his behavior on this particular weekend, how different was it from the times you'd seen him drunk before?
He appeared to be more intoxicated. His speech was slurred. He was having a hard time walking. He actually threw up. He had never done that before.
Now, when you were in the bedroom putting the bed back together, describe the condition of the bedroom.
Describe the condition.
The condition, what was it like? Was it messy? Was it clean?
No,
Was it dirty?
no. Our bedroom was very clean. I had stripped off the sheets that had vomit on them, put them in the hamper, put fresh sheets on the bed, and he didn't get any vomit or anything on the floor.
Did you ever see David drink any more alcohol at that point?
No.
Did you see any alcohol in the room?
The bottle of Southern Comfort was still in the bedroom.
But do you know how much of it was left, or how much was gone?
I would say a little more than half was gone from the bottle.
Did you do anything with the bottle?
I took it out of the bedroom and put it in the kitchen on the counter.
Why'd you do that?
I didn't want to leave it in the bedroom with David, and I didn't see the point of leaving it in the bedroom.
Why is that?
It didn't need to be there, and I really didn't want David drinking anymore.
Now, after you got David back into bed, did you go to pick up Bree?
Yes, I did.
And tell us again, where was she?
She was at my sister Darcy's house in
And about-
Baldwinsville.
About what time do you think it was, if you remember, that you got to your sister's house?
I believe it was about 2:30.
And who was there?
My sister, Darcy, and my niece, Elizabeth, and my nephew, Thomas.
Was Bree also there?
Yes.
And what was going on?
Nothing. They were hanging out, watching TV.
How much time did you spend there?
About a half an hour. I talked with my sister. She could see that I was upset, and we talked about what had happened the night before with David. And
Had you ever had these kinds of conversations with her before?
my sister, yeah.
Was this conversation any different than the other ones?
Well, to the fact that David was drunk, and but no, I had talked to my sister about my relationship with David before.
Now, where'd you go from there?
Back home.
And who was with you?
Bree?
Did you stop anywhere on the way home?
No, I did not.
When you got back, was David still there?
Yes, he was.
Was anyone else there?
Yes, Ashley was home.
How long had you been gone from the time you left to the time you got back?
I would say about an hour.
And when you got home, where was David? If you know.
He was in the bedroom,
And where was Ashley?
in her room.
And that's the room in the basement?
Yes,
How do you know Ashley was in the basement?
because I heard her,
And how do you know David was in the bedroom?
because I saw him.
And when you got back there with Bree, what did you all do? I mean, what were you doing after you got home?
I went into the bedroom to check on David. Bree, I believe, was in the living room watching TV, and Ashley was in her room. Ashley was getting ready to go to work, and Bree was waiting on us.
And what was David doing?
He got up to go to the bathroom.
And how long did you stay at the house?
I'm not sure. I don't really remember.
Okay, did you leave and go somewhere?
Yes,
Where?
took Ashley to work at Wendy's.
So you drove her this time? She didn't walk?
Yes, I drove her to work.
What time of day was this, if you remember?
It was a little before 4.
And did you run any other errands, or did you just drop her off?
No, Bree and I went to Walmart.
And what did you do at Walmart?
I bought a birthday card for my nephew and some Diet Pepsi and a magazine.
And where'd you go from there?
I went to my girlfriend Danny's house, and she was not home.
What time was that, if you remember?
I don't.
You said Danny Coleman wasn't home?
No,
What did
she
you
was
do?
not. We went, we were going to go to the Walmart in Cicero on Route 11, and when we got there, the place was packed, and we decided not to stay. So we headed back toward Liverpool.
Now, you said you were at Walmart, and now you said you're going to Walmart. Is it the same Walmart?
No. The Walmart we originally went to was the one on Route 31 in Clay. The one that we drove to that we were going to stop at was on Route 11 in Cicero.
Why'd you go to Walmart twice?
When we went to the Walmart on Route 31, they only had 2-liter bottles of Pepsi. They didn't have 6-packs, so we were going to see if they had any at the other Walmart.
You said it was very packed. Did you actually do any shopping there?
We didn't even get out of the car. We didn't park in the parking lot. We just left.
Where'd you go from there?
Headed toward home.
Did you go home?
No. Danny called me on my cell phone and said that she was on her way home and to meet her at her house.
They said Danny called you. You mean Danny Coleman?
Yes.
What did you do?
Went to Danny's house.
And again, around what time do you think you got there?
I believe it was about maybe 5:30.
No. Before you got to Danny's house, did you go home first? Did you run any other errands?
On the way, because we were already in Liverpool, I stopped at our house and dropped off the stuff that I brought.
Did you see David at that time?
Yes, I did.
Where was he?
In the bedroom.
Do you remember what he was doing?
He got up and headed toward the bathroom.
Did you talk to him? Did you have any conversations? Ask him how he was doing? Tell
Yes,
the
I
jury
did.
what you did.
He was getting up to go to the bathroom. He seemed a little unsteady on his feet, so I helped him into the bathroom. I asked him if he felt all right. He said he was fine. He went to the bathroom, had a little difficulty washing his hands, but got it done. And as he was walking back out of the bathroom, he tripped and fell. And when he fell, he hit his right upper thigh on the nightstand.
What was he wearing when he fell?
He was naked.
When he fell, I mean, when you say he fell, I mean, try to be as vivid as you can. Give us an idea of exactly the picture of what's going on.
The bathroom was a little half bath off of the master bedroom. And as you walked out of the bathroom, immediately in front of you was the nightstand. On the other side of the nightstand was our bed up against the wall. And immediately to the left of the entrance of the bathroom was the dresser. We had a very small bedroom. We had a queen-size bed that took up most of the bedroom. As David was walking out of the bathroom, I'm not sure what he tripped on, a rug, the table, something, but he fell forward and caught the side of his leg on the nightstand and fell with his feet at the nightstand and his head at the bottom of the bed toward the closet.
Now, give us an idea. I mean, when you say fell, I mean, was it a bad fall? I mean, give us an idea of how...
It's not like he fell face first and knocked himself unconscious. He tripped and fell to the floor.
Did he get hurt?
Other than the scratch on his leg, no, I do not believe that he was hurt. He didn't hit his head. He wasn't bleeding anywhere. He wasn't complaining of any pain.
Now, you've seen some photographs that have been entered into evidence of what David looked like when he was discovered by the police 2 days later. Do you remember those?
Yes.
And do you remember that there was a picture of something that looked like a rug burn on David?
Yes, I remember the picture.
Did he get that injury at this time?
No, he did not.
Now, after you said he fell, again, tell us some more. What happened next?
He fell. I went to help him get up off the floor, and he told me to leave him alone. He was going to, I said, I'll help you get up. He told me to just get away and leave him alone. Leave him right there. And I did.
What was his attitude towards you? What was it like?
He was really being mean. He was like, get away from me. He was agitated. And I was angry. I was really mad then because here he did this to himself. He had gotten drunk. He fell. Now I'm trying to help him, and he's being miserable to me. So when he told me to leave him alone, I left him there.
And who else was in the house at this time?
Bree.
And when you said you left him there, exactly where was he when you left him, and where did you go, or what did you do?
He was sitting on the floor in our bedroom by the bed. I walked out of the bedroom, walked into the living room, got Bree, and we left the house.
Now, before you left the bedroom, can you describe, was it in the same condition as it was the time you saw it before?
The only difference was there was a glass on the nightstand now.
Can you describe the glass?
It was a tall drinking glass, probably about 8 or 10 inches. It was glass.
Was it different than the one you had seen him drinking the Pepsi from before?
No, it was the same kind of glass.
Now, you've seen pictures entered in evidence from the nightstand of a couple days before, and you saw pictures of glasses. Did it look like those glasses?
It was the same style of glass, only they were bigger. It was a bigger glass.
From the same set?
It was from the same set.
Now, you said you left David alone. Did you leave him alone and stay in the house, or did you go somewhere?
We went to Danny's house.
Why'd you end up going back to Danny's?
We never made it to Danny's. When she called and said she was on her way home to go, I stopped at the house, dropped off what I bought at Walmart, and then had intended to go to Danny's from there.
Can you tell us about what time it was that you left the house, and maybe about what time it was you got to Danny's?
I don't really know.
Was it, and again, if you can, just help out as best you can. Was it, try to narrow it down. Was it earlier in the afternoon, later in the afternoon? Was it nighttime? Was it dark?
It wasn't dark. It was later in the afternoon, early evening.
And you said you went to Danny's with Bree?
Yes.
And who else was at Danny's when you got there?
When I got to Danny's house, her husband Mike, her son Nicholas, and Mike's uncle Bob Wells was there. I was talking to Mike in the driveway, and as I was talking to Mike, Danny pulled into the driveway.
And how long did you stay there?
I think about an hour and a half.
What were you doing there?
We went out in Danny's backyard. She has a really nice patio, and we sat out there and talked.
What did you talk about?
I told her about what was going on with David. She talked about, her day, just usual stuff that Danny and I talk about. I vented a lot about my frustration over my weekend.
Were you angry at that point?
Yeah, I was.
And where was Bree? What was she doing?
Bree was there with us. She was sitting out in the yard, too.
Was she talking? Was she in on the conversation, or?
No.
And you said that you were there at Danny's. How long were you there?
Probably about an hour and a half.
And when you left, was everyone still there? Danny, Bree, Danny's husband, Nicholas, were they all still there?
Yes.
Where did you go?
We went and picked Ashley up from... No, we didn't pick Ashley. Yes. I'm sorry. We went back home.
You say we, who's we?
I'm sorry. Bree and me.
And after you got back home, what did you do? What did you say?
I went into the bedroom, and...
Is that the first place you went to? Did you go right into the bedroom, or did you do other things?
No, I pretty much walked into the house and went into the bedroom.
Why'd you go right to the bedroom?
Because David was there, and I wanted to check on him. And when I walked into the bedroom, he was still sitting on the floor.
In the same place that he was when you'd left?
He had turned, and his back was up against the bed.
And at this point, are you still angry at him?
Yeah, but now I feel bad because I assumed when he told me to leave him alone, he would get up and get in the bed, and he obviously did not, and he had sat on the floor the entire time I was gone.
What did you do?
I tried to help him to get up on the bed, and he just wouldn't do it. So I called my girlfriend Danny and asked her to send Mike over.
Why did you need Mike's help? Why didn't you just put him in bed?
Because David was a big guy, and I couldn't lift him up myself.
While you're waiting for Mike to come over, what were you doing?
Talking to David.
What were you talking about?
I kept telling him he needed to get up, and I asked him a couple of times, especially then, if he wanted me to call an ambulance if he was sick, if he wanted to go to the doctors, if he thought he needed to go to the hospital.
Now, if you were angry at him, why were you asking him these questions?
Well, I had been very angry with him, but, you know, it came back after being gone for an hour and a half, and he was sitting on the floor, and I felt bad.
Was there anything about his condition that was concerning you?
He still appeared to be drunk, but he wasn't, he
Was he more intoxicated, less intoxicated?
about the same. I mean, he was communicating. He wasn't unconscious or going in and out of consciousness.
And where was Bree at this time?
Bree was in the living room.
Now, when you say the living room, how far away from the bedroom is the living room?
Probably from here to the doors.
And is it an open area, a hallway where the doors closed? I mean, I just want the jury to have an idea, a really good picture of where everybody is and what's going on.
If you walk in the back door of our house, you walk into the kitchen. You walk out of the kitchen into an open area that on the left side was the living area, on the right side was the dining room. And then it went down a narrow hallway. The first door you came to was the bathroom. First door on the right was the bathroom. In the right corner of the hall was the master bedroom. In the left corner of the hall was the office. And then on the left side was Bree's bedroom.
And was the door open while this was going on with David?
Yes.
At some point, did Mike Coleman show up?
Yes, he did.
Was he alone?
No, his son Nicholas was with him.
When he got there, did you answer the door? Did someone else?
Bree must have let him in because Mike came right into the bedroom.
So you stayed in the bedroom the whole time?
Yes.
When Mike came into the bedroom, what happened?
He came in, David was sitting and was kneeling with his elbows on the side of the bed. And before Mike got there, because David was nude, I put a pair of underwear on him while he was sitting on the floor.
How'd you do that if he was such a big guy?
I scooched him on him. I mean, he lifted up. He could lift up his legs and stuff. It's not like I had to pick him up to put them on him.
So at this point, was he communicating with you?
Yeah, I mean, I asked him questions. He answered them.
What happened when Mike came in the room?
When Mike came into the room, he walked up to David and he put his hand on David's shoulder and he said, you know, come on, David, let's get up in bed. You don't want to stay on the floor. Come on, you got to help me here. And he talked to David for a couple of minutes, and David didn't move. He tried to rub David's back a few more times, and again, he didn't move. So Michael put his arm on one side underneath David, and I did on the other. And Mike said, come on, you know, help us here. And David stood up and got in bed.
And when he got in bed, did you cover him up?
Yes.
Did you talk to him?
I did. He looked at me and he said, what did you tell Danny and Mike?
And was that unusual?
He didn't want anyone to know how he was behaving, he was embarrassed, I believe.
Judge, I object unless it's something he said.
Yeah, I'll sustain it.
Stacey, you said originally that earlier in the day, I guess you were angry at David,
Yes, I was.
and then I believe you said that when you got back and you saw his condition, you started feeling bad.
Yes.
At this point later on, I mean, how are you feeling towards David?
I think he's fine. I mean, I still feel bad. I'm still a little mad at him. I mean, this was, again, supposed to be a good weekend for us, and here we are. You know, he has put himself into the condition that he was in.
Did you and Mike Coleman talk about his condition?
Yes.
What did you say?
We talked about the fact if he thought he needed to go to the hospital.
When you said if he, I mean, tell us what you said about, what did you say in that conversation? What exactly did you say?
To Mike Coleman?
Yes.
Well, I had told him that I asked David if David wanted to go to the hospital, if he felt sick, he wanted to go to the hospital, and he said no. And I asked Mike what he thought, and Mike said that he didn't think he needed to go to the hospital either.
Was David the kind of guy who would, go to the hospital?
No.
I'll sustain it.
What happened next?
Mike left.
before Mike left, did you guys have any more conversations, or did you talk about anything or do anything?
No, Mike left. Bree and I went and got Ashley from work.
Now, when you said, before you left, when David was still there, what was his demeanor towards you? You said at times he'd been somewhat belligerent, other times less so. Was he belligerent now? Was he hostile?
No, he was in bed. He was laying down. I covered him up before I walked out of the bedroom. He was, fine. Well, he appeared to be okay, and I went and got Ashley.
Well, when you say he appeared to be okay, do you mean he appeared sober?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll sustain it.
When you say he appeared to be okay,
He
describe
was
to the jury what you
breathing.
mean.
He was breathing. His eyes were open. He could talk. He did not appear to be in any visible distress.
Now, while you and Mike were helping David into bed, where was Bree?
In the living room with Nicholas.
And you said that, how long did this whole thing take with Mike?
Maybe 5 minutes.
And did he leave right away afterwards?
After Mike and I talked, yeah, he left.
And did you leave with him?
No, I left shortly after to go get to get Ashley from work at Wendy's.
And where did you go from there?
Back home.
And when you went to get Ashley, where was Bree?
She went with me.
And about how long do you think it took for you to get to Wendy's, get Ashley, and come back?
10 minutes.
And when you got back, what happened when you got back?
Ashley went to her room. Bree got her sleeping bag and her pillows and laid down on the couch, or laid down on the floor next to the couch. And I laid down on the couch, and Bree started watching a movie.
Do you remember what movie it was?
It was a Disney movie, a goofy movie, something like that.
Where was Ashley?
In her room.
And that's the one in the basement.
Yes.
You didn't spend any time together as a group?
No, Ashley had to get up really early the next morning to open for work, so she wanted to go to bed.
Do you know about what time it was that she had to get up?
About 5:45.
Do you know what time it was that you went to bed?
It was about 9:30 when Bree turned the movie off, so it was about 9:30 when we both laid down.
And you said you both lay down. Did you lay down in your bedroom?
No, I laid down on the couch.
Why is that?
David was resting peacefully. I did not want to be in the bedroom with him at the time, so I slept on the couch.
Where was Bree?
And her sleeping bag on the floor next to me.
Was that something that was usual for you two to do, for you to sleep on the couch and her to sleep in a sleeping bag?
No, but she wanted to. I was sleeping out on the couch, so she wanted to sleep out there with me.
Now, over the course of the night, did you wake up at all, or did Bree? Do you know if Bree woke up or anything like that?
I woke up a couple of times.
Do you remember how many times?
I think 3.
And do you know exactly what times it was that you woke up?
The first time, I think it was about 2:30.
And what did you do when you woke up then, the first time?
I went into the bedroom, and David was sitting up on the bed, and he asked me to get him something to drink. He wanted some cranberry juice.
Now, when you went to the bedroom, was that door locked?
Yes, it was. It was open.
Well, I just asked, was it locked?
Oh, I thought you said, was it unlocked? No, the door was not locked. It was open.
And you said David wanted you to get him something to drink?
Yes.
What did you do?
I went and got him a glass of cranberry juice.
And did you bring it to him in a glass or a bottle? How'd you bring it?
In a glass, about 4 or 5 inches high, about an 8-ounce glass.
Now, you remember I had asked you about whether or not you remembered seeing the glasses in that photograph?
Yes.
Could you tell whether one of those glasses was the actual glass you used?
I would assume that one of them was the empty one.
Are they the same? But they're the same type of glass.
Absolutely, yes.
And so you brought the cranberry juice in this glass down. Did you pour cranberry juice for him? Did David do that?
No, I poured a glass and took the glass to him of cranberry juice.
And what did he do with it?
He started to drink it, and he said that he wanted some ice in it. It wasn't cold enough for him. So I took the glass and went to the kitchen and put ice in it, and I grabbed the bottle of cranberry juice and took it to the bedroom.
Okay. So you brought the bottle back?
Yes, I did.
Now, when you got back to the bedroom, I just want to be clear, how many glasses of what ended up in the bedroom?
At this point, there's still only the glass of cranberry juice in the bedroom. After David drank the cranberry juice, he asked for some water. I went and got water, and then there were 2 glasses and a bottle of cranberry juice in the bedroom.
And that second glass, did that look like the same kind of glass as you saw in those photographs?
Yes.
Did you see whether or not David drank out of either of those glasses?
The first one I know he did.
Do you know about the second one?
No, I don't.
Now, you said that was the first time you woke up. Did you do anything else other than give David the drinks?
David asked me what we were going to do on Saturday. And I told him that it was about 3 o'clock Sunday morning and that we were going to be going to Thomas's birthday party. And he got a little upset and didn't believe that it was Sunday. Couldn't believe that he had slept all day Saturday.
What did you say to him?
I said, well, you did, and it's 3 o'clock Sunday morning, and we're going to Thomas's birthday party today. And he laid down, and I went back out on the couch.
Now, at this point, what were you thinking? Did you have any thoughts or feelings toward him, in terms of whether you're angry at him or something like that?
No, I mean, I was a little concerned. That's why I got up and checked on him, but he seemed to be fine. He was thirsty. He drank the cranberry juice. He laid back down, went back to sleep, as far as I know.
And did you go back to bed?
Yes, I went back out on the couch.
And you said that you woke up maybe 1 or 2 more times?
Yes.
What did you do then?
The next time I woke up, I had a cigarette
Where did you have that?
out in the garage.
Do you know about any idea what time it was over the course of the night?
Maybe 4 o'clock.
How long did that take?
Not maybe 5 minutes.
Did you see David the second time you woke up?
Yes, I did.
Tell us how.
I went into the bedroom, and he was coming back from the bathroom.
Now, you said coming back from the bathroom that was attached.
Yes.
And did you talk to him at all?
Yes.
What did you talk to him about?
Well, I asked him if he was okay. He sat down on the bed. His underwear that I had put on him earlier were on the floor, and I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Was he speaking clearly or normally?
Yes.
Did you have to help him at all this time?
Objection,
No.
Judge. I object to the leading and the multiple choice questions. If she could just be allowed to tell the story.
I try not to leave.
Fair enough. At some point, at this time, did you get him anything to drink?
No, I did not.
Did you get yourself anything to drink?
Yes, I did.
What was that?
Diet Pepsi,
And where'd you get that from?
the refrigerator in the kitchen.
And after you got your drink, what did you do?
I went back into the living room to lay down on the couch, and I stepped on Bree on my way to the couch.
Do you know if she woke up?
Yeah, she asked me what time it was.
Now, you said that there was another time you got up. Tell us what happened then.
I got up. I went into the bedroom, and when I pushed the door open and walked in, David was sitting at the end of the bed, dry heaving. He was throwing up, but nothing was coming up. And I have a very weak stomach when it comes to that, so I pulled the door closed and stood on the other side of the door until he was done. And when I didn't hear him retching anymore, I opened the door. And when I opened the door, David looked at me and he said, "Get out, or get the fuck out, get away from me and leave me alone."
Can you describe his tone of voice?
It sounded like he was very agitated, very angry.
Was this different than he had been before?
Yes.
Tell us how.
It was the first time since I had ever met David that I felt any kind of fear toward him. The tone in his voice and the look on his face when he said that kind of frightened me a little bit.
And what happened next?
I backed out of the bedroom and closed the door behind me.
Is that the last time you saw David alive?
Yes.
Now, when you saw that bedroom, or I should say, did you have a chance to observe what the bedroom looked like?
Yeah.
What did it look like?
Our bedroom, the bed, the sheets that I had put on the bed earlier were still on the bed. There was the cranberry juice bottle and 2 glasses on the nightstand.
Was there anything else on the nightstand?
No.
And after you left David at that point, what did you do?
Went back out on the couch.
Did you go back to sleep?
Yeah, I think so.
And when you woke up, what did you do?
I woke up about 6 o'clock, a little before 6, maybe a little after 6, just to make sure. I sat up and I was going to go check and see that Ashley was up so she could get ready to go to work, and I could hear the shower, so I laid right back down.
Did you see Ashley, actually?
No, but I could hear the shower running, and Bree was on the floor, David was in bed, so I assumed that Ashley was in the shower.
About what time was it that you got up that day?
That day, about 9 o'clock.
And what did you do when you got up?
Went to the bathroom, went to go get into my bedroom so I could get some clothes, and the door was locked.
Could you hear or see anything about the bedroom?
No, the door, I couldn't get in. The door was locked.
Did you hear any sounds coming from the bedroom?
Yeah, I could hear David snoring in the bedroom.
You say you could hear him snoring. Describe it.
I could hear snoring on the other side of the door.
Did it sound unusual?
No, David snored like a chainsaw, so you could hear him very clearly.
Now, what did you do next?
I went downstairs, got some clothes, took a shower, got ready to go to my nephew's birthday party.
And where was this party?
At my sister's house in Baldwinsville.
About what time do you think you left to go to the party?
Well, we left the house at 11 o'clock. I took Bree down to Wendy's so that she could have some lunch and to talk to Ashley, find out what time she was going to need to be picked up, and to let her know that I was going to be at Darcy's house. Bree ate her lunch, and we went to Darcy's.
Did you know what time it was you got there?
Right around noon.
Did you know how long you stayed there?
Until Ashley called me about 3 o'clock.
What did you do?
Bree and I went and picked Ashley up from work, and then the 3 of us went back to Darcy's house.
The same party?
Yeah, yes.
And how long did you stay this time?
About an hour and a half.
And what were you doing at the party? Were you socializing?
The party had pretty much broken up. Everybody had left. I went back and I talked to my sister for a little while, and then I laid down on her couch and took a little nap.
What did you talk to her about?
Just general stuff. Thomas's birthday party, my mom, David.
You said you took a nap?
Yeah, I laid down for a little while.
Do you know how long that was?
I don't know how long I slept for, but we were at my sister's house maybe an hour, hour and a half tops.
When you left, who went with you?
Bree and Ashley.
Where did you go?
We went home.
You say home back to Wetzel Road?
Yes.
And what time was it you think you got there?
Maybe 5:30, 6 o'clock.
Did you have any plans for the evening?
Yeah, I took the girls to Outback for dinner.
Were you supposed to take David?
No,
Why not?
I made the plans with the girls.
And when you got back home, did you all go into the house?
No. Ashley and Bree stayed in the car listening to the radio. I ran in, threw on some makeup, fixed my hair because I had taken a nap, and I was in the house maybe 5 minutes.
Did you see or talk to David?
No, I did not.
Did you try to check on him?
The door was still locked. I could still hear him snoring, and I went out to the car, and we went to the Outback.
Now, why didn't you make more of an effort to check on David?
He appeared to be getting better. I mean, he was walking, he was speaking, he was drinking. He was not unconscious. He was making sense. And when he sat up on the bed and told me to get out, he did not act like he was somebody that was having a difficult time in any way. And he was sitting on the bed. He looked right at me and told me to get the fuck away from him. He was very clear. He was not slurring his speech. He sounded very angry. At that point, I didn't really think that there was anything wrong.
Now, when you were at dinner, you said you were at Outback. You said you were at Outback.
Yes.
How long were you and the girls at Outback?
About an hour, hour and a half.
Did you go back home?
No. Well, we stopped quickly at the house so that Ashley could get her phone charger, and then we went over to Danny's house.
When you stopped quickly, did you go in or just Ashley?
Ashley went in and got her phone charger.
And where did you all go from there?
To Danny's house.
All three of you?
Yes.
And again, around about what time was it that you got to Danny's?
Sometime between, probably right around 7:30, 7:45, somewhere in there. I'm not positive about that.
And when you were back at Danny's, you said Ashley and Bree were with you, correct?
Yes.
And what did you do when you got to Danny's?
We sat around talking. Kids were playing.
Do you remember what you talked about with Danny?
She asked me about David. I told her, that he was locked in the bedroom. Told her that we had been out to dinner.
Did you talk about anything else?
Not really that I remember.
How long did you stay before you left?
We weren't there for long. I don't remember exactly how long we were there.
When you left, where did you go?
Home.
Now, did you make any phone calls to anybody on that day?
Several different phone calls throughout the day.
Do you remember anybody in particular you called?
At one point during the day, I had called Bob Ross.
And remind the jury, who's Bob?
Bob is David's best friend.
And what did you tell him?
Bob was not home, but I left him a message asking him to give me a call, that I wanted him to give David a call and meet up with him. Maybe he and David could go golfing or go four-wheeling or just do something, the two of them. I thought he really needed to talk with his friend.
Do you remember about what time of day it was that you called Bob Ross?
It was in the afternoon because he didn't. They were gone golfing. I found out later that they were golfing, but it was in the afternoon.
At some point, did Bob Ross get back to you?
Yes, it was.
How long later was it?
In the evening.
And where were you when you got the call back from Bob Ross?
I was home, but he called me on my cell phone.
And do you remember what you said to him when you actually talked to him this time?
Yeah, I had told him about what was going on with David and him drinking and what he had said to me when he locked me out of the bedroom, that I was concerned for David and I wanted Bob to talk to him, to make plans with him and, do something with him during the early part of the week. I thought he needed to spend some time with Bob.
Did Bob Ross offer to come over?
He said that if he said he could come over a little later, and I told him that I told him that David was sleeping and that he didn't really need to come, but to call him in the morning.
And do you know about how long that phone call took?
A few minutes.
After the phone call, did you make any decision about where you were going to spend the night?
Yeah, I did.
What was the decision?
I was not going to stay at the house that night.
Why did you make the decision?
Bob and Cindy Ross both had said...
Objection.
Sustained.
So, Stacey can't. Hold on.
Okay.
After you made the decision not to stay over at Wetzel Road that night, where did you plan to stay?
Danny's house.
And did you go to Danny's?
Yes, I did. After I took Bree to her girlfriend Lisa's, and Ashley to her girlfriend Connie's.
And about what time was it you got to Danny's?
9:30, 10 o'clock.
Now, when you got to Danny's, did you talk to her some more about what was going on?
Yeah, I told her that I didn't feel comfortable staying there, that I was upset, that I figured being out of the house was probably the best thing to do. She agreed. I slept on her couch.
Did you make any plans for the next day?
I was going to work
And when we say going to work, you mean actually at the business or at the home office?
at the business.
What time did you get up the next day?
Why don't we break here for the afternoon recess? Take about 10 minutes. Don't talk about the case, don't form any opinions about it. We'll take about a 10-minute break.
When did you get up?
About 6 or 6:30.
Who else was there?
Danny, her husband Mike, her 3 kids, Ashley, Nick, and Ryan.
And where did you go after you left Danny's?
I went to Liverpool Heating.
Did you have any kind of a plan for later in the day?
Any kind of a plan for...
What you were going to do for the day? I mean, what was your plan? What was the...
Well, I was going to do what I needed to do at the office. David and John were supposed to finish the Messina job in Fayetteville that they didn't finish on Friday.
Who's John?
John is was David's employee.
Do you know his full name?
John Howard.
How long did John work there?
I don't know. He was a relative of David's ex-wife, and I believe he worked there for several years.
Now, you said you were going to work. Did you go to the business address?
Yes.
And who was there when you got there, if anybody?
No one. When I got there, there was no one there yet.
What did you do at the business?
I opened up the door. I took the phones off of forward, so they rang at the shop instead of the house, and waited for, I believe David to show up and John to show up.
Did either one of them show up?
John did.
How long after you got there did John come by?
He got there a little before 8.
And did you talk to him?
Yes, I told him that David wasn't at the office yet and that he should head over to Fayetteville and get started on finishing up the Messina job.
Did you talk to him about what had gone on over the weekend?
No, I had not.
And how long was John there before he left?
15 minutes, 20 minutes, long enough to load up his truck with what he needed to take to go to the job.
Did you ask him about whether or not he'd seen or heard from David?
Not at that point.
And after John left, what did you do?
Waited a little while to see if David was going to show up.
Did he?
No, he did not.
What did you do?
I tried to call him on his cell phone.
Did he pick up?
No, he had his phone shut off.
How do you know that?
We did not have voicemail on our cell phones, so I got the canned recording that the singular customer I was trying to reach was not available.
And did you know how many times you tried to call David?
On his cell phone, a couple, a few.
Did you try the house phone?
Later in the day.
Now, what were you thinking at this time while you were trying to make these calls?
I was thinking he was probably on his way to the job, and waited a little while and called John at the job. I called John on his cell phone and asked if David was there. He said he was not, and he hadn't heard or seen him. He hadn't heard from him or seen him. Now I was getting a little concerned. It was getting later in the morning, and he still hadn't showed up to work, hadn't showed up on the job site.
So what did you do?
I tried his cell phone a couple more times. It was still off. About 1 o'clock, I called the house. There was no answer. At about 1:30 or 1:45, I called the Clay Police Department.
And do you remember that 911 call we heard?
Yes.
Was that your voice?
Yes, it was.
Was that the conversation you had with 911?
I didn't call 911. I called the I actually called Clay Police Department.
Sorry, but that was your
That was my
conversation.
call, yes.
And do you remember? We don't have to play the call again, but do you remember essentially what you told them?
Yes, that I wanted someone to come to the house with me to check on my husband, that he had locked me out of the bedroom at 5 o'clock Sunday morning, and that was the last time I had seen him or talked to him. And I wanted someone to go with me to the house.
Now, we've heard some testimony from Detective Spinelli that he had later on, and we'll get to that, but that later on he'd asked you questions and had some concerns about where you made that call to the police.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just be clear. Where did you make the call to the police?
I was at the shop,
And what phone did you use?
the office phone.
And after you made the call, what did you do?
They told me to go to the house and meet the police officer there. I turned the answering machine on the phone, shut all the lights off, locked the doors, and went to my house.
How long did it take you from the time you made that phone call to when you got to your house?
Less than 10 minutes, 10
When
minutes.
you got there, were the police there yet?
No, they were not.
What did you do until the police got there?
I opened the overhead door for the garage, and I sat on the front porch, the steps, waiting for them.
How long did it take for the police to get there?
Probably about another 5 minutes after I got there.
And what happened when the police arrived?
The police officer walked up to me, introduced himself. I introduced myself. I showed him into the house, took him in, showed him where the bedroom was. As we were walking from the front yard into the house, I was explaining what had transpired over the weekend, what had happened that morning, and took him into the house and showed him where the bedroom was.
Now, do you remember, was that the same officer who testified a few days ago? Do you remember?
I don't remember which officer was which.
Do you remember, what was your demeanor like while this was going on?
I was getting nervous. It was not, David could be obstinate and stubborn, and he could be a jerk, but it wasn't like him to be torturous, and I thought that if he were in there and okay, that he was really being cruel. And I was concerned that maybe he wasn't okay.
And what happened when you showed the officer the bedroom?
He knocked on the door, called David's name. David didn't answer. Another police officer showed up. They asked if I knew for sure that David was in the bedroom. I told them I didn't know for sure at that point. They asked if I had looked in the basement for him, and I had not. So one of them went down into the basement, and David was not there. They came back up and asked if they could look in the windows on the back of the house to see if they could see if David was in the bedroom. They took a step ladder out of the garage, walked around to the back of the house, put the ladder up against the house and looked in. And I guess they couldn't see anything in the window.
Were you with them at this point?
No, I was sitting in the garage
Why?
because they asked me to stay out of the way.
Do you know about how long it took for them to look around and then look in the window and come back?
Not more than 5 minutes.
What did they do next?
They walked in the house, and they said that they were the only way that they could see getting access to the bedroom was to bust the door down, and I told them absolutely go ahead.
And what did they do?
They kicked the door in.
Were you there when they did that?
No, at that point they asked me to stay out of the house.
Oh. What is the what's the next thing you found out?
One of the police officers came and took a chair out of the garage and put it in front of the house, just outside of the garage, and asked me to sit in it. And I asked him, what was going on, and he said he didn't know. I asked him if David was okay. He said he didn't know, that an ambulance was on its way to check him out. I'm not sure who showed up when. I know my girlfriend Lynn, I was actually on the phone with Lynn during this time. She showed up. Some more officers showed up. The ambulance showed up. And shortly after the ambulance got there, I was told that David was dead.
And when you found this out, what happened?
I pretty much freaked out and lost it. I really don't remember a whole lot of the events from that point till about the time we got ready to leave the house. There are certain things that I do remember, but when people got there, talking to people, people had said, you know, I was speaking to them and I don't remember that. I was hysterical, crying.
Did you have friends there? Were neighbors there?
Danny and Lynn, I know Lynn was there. I'm not sure when Danny showed up. At some point, the Cafalos came over. My mom, my brother, Bob Ross, all those people at some point during the events that unfolded after that came, but I can't tell you who came when.
Did you spend that whole time in front of the house in the chair?
Once they knew that David was dead and they were not going to remove him from the house, and they could see that I was very upset, they moved me into the garage, just inside the garage, so that I was not out in public view. And I stayed there, I don't know how long, and eventually a couple of different detectives spoke to me.
Do you remember Detective Leshinski?
Yes, I do.
And do you remember where she spoke to you?
Originally in my garage, and she asked me if I would go next door on the other side of the driveway to the Cafalos' house so she could talk to me and try and get some information about what had happened over the weekend.
And at this time, did you talk to her?
Yeah, I went over to the Cafalos with her.
Do you remember what questions she asked you?
Specifically, no. Generally, I know she was asking me, what had happened that weekend, what took place on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I remember general things. Specific questions, I do not.
At that time, did she ever write up or show you any kind of an affidavit?
No, she was taking notes the whole time, and it was very difficult for her. I don't really remember, but I was told that she would ask me a question, I would repeat the answer several times, the same thing over and over and over again until she asked me another question. At some point, she stopped the interview and went and talked to, I guess, her sergeant or whoever was in charge of the scene at the time.
Now, at this point, did you know what had happened to David?
I knew that David was dead. I did not know how he died.
Did anyone tell you?
No.
When did you find out?
When did I find out how David died?
Yes.
At Danny Coleman's house later that night.
How did you find out?
I could not stay at the house that night, and I didn't want to. The girls and I went to Danny's house. My mom and my brother and my sister came over too. We were waiting to go to the medical examiner's office to view David's body. And my brother, we were talking about different things that had happened, and they had let me see David before they took him out of the house on the stretcher. And I remembered when I kissed him, he smelled really sweet, kind of like baby urine smells, that really sweet smell. And I had made the comment that I remembered that. And when I did that, my brother put his hand over his face and turned his head toward my mother and said something. And I asked him what he had said. And at that point, he told me that my neighbor had told him.
I'll sustain it.
So you just tell us, when did you find out how David died?
That night.
At the medical examiner's?
No, at Danny's house.
At Danny's house, okay. Now, did you have a chance to meet with Detective Leshinski again after that?
Before the Detective Leshinski left and before I left the scene, she gave me her card and asked that I call her first thing in the morning to set up an appointment to come down and give her a statement.
Did you do that?
Yes, I called her about 7:15.
When did you actually go and meet with her?
Between 8 and 9 o'clock that morning.
And how much time did you spend with Detective Leshinski?
I was there all day, from about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon.
And at some point from that, did she write up a statement for you?
We sat talking. She was asking me questions. She would ask me questions and then let me speak, tell her what I remembered, what had happened. She would write notes. She would ask more questions and let me speak. We did this for several hours. She took her notes and she went to someone to dictate an actual statement to. She formed the statement in her own words from her notes. I did not write that statement.
You didn't write it, but did you have a chance to read it?
Yes, I did.
How much time did you spend reading it, do you know?
I read all the pages. It maybe took me 5 or 10 minutes.
Did you notice anything in there that was inaccurate or untrue?
Not untrue, but I did notice discrepancies, and I noticed some information that I had talked to her about that was not in there.
And did you say anything about that?
Yes, I did.
What did you say?
I told her, this is not my words, and there are things in here there aren't things in here that I told you about. At that point, her response was that it did not need to be a detailed account of the events of the weekend. They just needed an overview for their record.
And did you have any problem with that?
No, because even though there was information missing in the statement, what was there was true.
And how did Detective Leshinski treat you over the course of time while she was interviewing you?
She was very friendly, very cordial, very professional.
Was she the only one who spoke to you?
At that time, yes.
Did she offer you anything to eat or drink?
I believe she got me a soda.
Now, you said that you were there essentially all day.
Yes.
When you left, did she give you a copy of your statement?
No, she did not.
Did you ever receive a copy of it in the mail or anything like that?
No, I did not.
Now, how long after David died did the funeral happen?
3 days. Well, 3 days for the calling hours. The 4th day was the funeral.
And I assume you were at the funeral.
Yes, I was.
And how are you dealing with David's death at the funeral?
I was having a hard time.
What do you mean?
It was difficult. I was very upset at the time. It was hard. I was having a difficult time processing David being dead.
Did you, how much, I'll ask you this, who was with you at the funeral?
My mom and my stepdad were there. Danny and Michael Coleman were there. Lynn and Paul Pulaski came. Bob and Cindy Ross were there. My daughters were there.
Did they travel with you?
Yes, Danny and Mike and the girls and I all went in a vehicle together.
How were the girls taking David's death?
Ashley didn't seem very affected by it. She wasn't overly upset.
Did you think that was unusual or there was something wrong with that?
I guess all things considered, not really. She was not really close to David. But on the other hand, Bree was visibly upset. In fact, at one point, she got crying and she made Michael Coleman cry. She was so upset.
Now, Stacey, I noticed something. When you were testifying earlier and you were talking about Michael, you seemed to have a little bit more difficult time talking about that.
Objection, Judge.
I'll sustain it.
Did you feel differently about David than you felt about Michael?
I loved David and I loved Michael. They were different people and I loved them for different reasons and in different ways. David and Michael were completely opposite ends of the spectrum. I couldn't have picked two different guys from each other if I consciously tried to.
Now, after David died, what happened to the business, Liverpool Heating?
The business died the day David did. The doors closed and nothing else happened with that business.
What did you do for work?
I didn't. I collected unemployment.
Now, did David have any life insurance?
David had a life insurance policy that he had to purchase by order of his divorce.
And did you get any money from that insurance policy?
His ex-wife got whatever balance was due to her in her monthly maintenance, and I got the balance.
Do you remember how much that was?
$42,000, I believe, $43,000.
Can you tell the jury exactly, if you remember, what did you do with that money?
I paid for David's funeral,
Do you know how much that was?
about $10,000.
What else?
I bought his headstone. I used the rest of the money to pay the expenses of the business and the house. I had to keep the gas and electric on at the business. I had to keep up the mortgage payments and the tax payments on the house and the business. You know, regular monthly bills that had to be taken care of until David's estate got settled.
Afterwards, after you, I should ask this, when did you receive the payment for the insurance?
I believe it was the end of October, the beginning of November. The insurance company did not issue a payment until an official death certificate had been issued. And due to the investigation into David's death, it took a little bit longer than normal for the medical examiner to issue a death certificate.
Now, we've heard quite a bit of talk about a will.
Yes?
Can you tell us about the will?
We went to Vegas for 10 days when we got married. We were leaving the state and we were going to be gone for quite a while. David wanted a will in place so that if anything happened to one or both of us, things would be taken care of. He had a copy, I had a copy. We did not consult an attorney, and it was not drawn up by an attorney. David did speak to a customer of his who was a retired attorney and asked if we made the will and it was witnessed, would it be a binding document? And he was told yes.
Did David sign that will?
No, he did not.
Who did?
I did,
Why did you sign David's will?
because we never signed our wills.
Why didn't you sign your wills?
They were going to be witnessed by Lynn and Pulaski when we went to leave for our honeymoon, and we never did it. We were running late, we were throwing bags in the car, and we left, and it never got done.
How long after David's death did you sign that will?
A couple of weeks.
Tell us about the circumstances of it.
Because the business and everything was in David's name, there was huge tax bills coming due, sales tax was coming due, corporate taxes had to be filed, all the vendors had to be paid. None of that stuff could be done because I was not an officer of the company Liverpool Heating. Also, all of David's personal debt, his mortgage, his motorcycle payment, his car payment, none of that could be taken care of without this being settled.
And so, did you ask anyone to, well, I should say this, we heard some testimony from Lynn Pulaski.
Yes.
Is what she said the truth?
Yes.
And tell us about how that happened.
I called her and asked her if her and Paul would witness a signature on a will so that I could get the paperwork started so that the estate could be probated and David's bills and debts and company and all of that could be taken care of.
At the time when you did that, did you know it was wrong?
Yes,
Why did you do it?
it needed to be done. I needed to be able to take care of David's things. I never in a million years anticipated that I would be a widow after 2 years of marriage.
Why didn't you do it lack of a better word, why didn't you do it the hard way?
Why
didn't
did
you do
it?
it the hard way? Why didn't you go to court? Why didn't you fight it out that way? Why not?
I don't know. I just guess I didn't think about it.
How long did it take for the will and the estate to get settled?
A little over a year.
And during that time, were you working?
I collected unemployment for 6 months, and then I went to school for 6 months.
Where did you go to school?
I went to BOCES adult education program.
What were you studying?
I took, they called it a legal secretary position, but it was basically update on skills. I learned how to do PowerPoint, Excel, Access, how to use WordPerfect, which I knew the basics of WordPerfect, but it taught me how to really get into WordPerfect and utilize the files and what to do in it.
Now, was this all Norm Turco, the attorney, was working on the estate?
Yes.
And at some point, the estate was finally settled, right?
Yes.
And did you get everything out of the estate?
No, I did not.
Tell us about that. What do you mean?
I kept the house and a car, all of David's other assets, his motorcycle, his four-wheelers, his snowmobiles, his travel trailer, car hauler, his motorcycle, all of his toys, any of his assets, and the company assets, the physical company assets, and the building that housed Liverpool Heating were all sold to pay debt.
Did you receive anything from all that?
When it was all done, I believe I received about $60,000.
Did anyone else receive anything from the estate?
David's son, David Jr., received his father's Challenger, his classic car, and $2,500 in cash.
How did he end up with those?
I agreed to let him have those things.
Why did you do that?
Even though David was estranged from his son for quite a while, I believed that he would want his son to have that car. When David was younger, I had been told by different members of David's family, not mine, that...
Objection.
Sustained.
After David had died, did the relationship between you and the girls change at all?
We remained close. Life settled into a routine again.
Why did you stay at the house?
For a couple of reasons. That was my home with David. The girls were, Bree was still in school. I had just started working. Again, I had just got a job.
And which job was that?
I got a job at Hiscock Legal Aid.
Now, how long later was it before you heard anything from any of the police regarding issues they had with David's death?
I didn't hear anything. Oh, well, 3 weeks after David died, I got a call from Under Sheriff Warren Darby, who I know from when he used to be Chief Darby at Eastern Paramedics, telling me that
Sustained.
Just tell us, how long afterwards did a member of law enforcement?
About 3 weeks.
Okay. And after that, how long was it?
2 years.
And do you remember when it was that somebody from the sheriff's department first contacted you? Or I should say contacted you after the 2 years?
It was September 7th, 2007.
Do you know what day of the week that was?
Friday.
And do you know who it was who contacted you?
Dominic Spinelli and
And-
Val Brogan.
And did you recognize them as the detectives who testified earlier?
Yes.
And did they call you on the phone?
No, they did not.
How did they come to talk to you?
They showed up on my doorstep.
And what did you do?
I opened the door. I didn't recognize Detective Brogan. I had never met her. She, I came to find out, replaced Detective Leshinski, who had retired. I did recognize Dominic Spinelli after a minute
How did you recognize him?
because he was one of the detectives from at the house when David died.
Did you go with them?
We sat down on my patio and we talked a little bit. They asked how things were going. Detective Spinelli said that he had some questions that he wanted to ask me and some paperwork that he wanted to sign to be able to close out the investigation into David's death. So
Did they ask you to go anywhere?
well, at first I said, well, what are your questions, and show me the paperwork. And he said, no, well, I don't have the paperwork with me, even though he had a huge file with him. He said he didn't have the paperwork with him, that they wanted me to go down to CID with them.
Did you go?
After I took a shower, yeah, I went with them.
And describe where is CID?
Where is CID?
Where is it?
It's right down here on one or the other side of this building. It's
Sheriff's Department?
yes.
And where in the Sheriff's Department did they take you? You what floor?
I don't know what floor. It was like the third floor, maybe.
Yeah, where did they take? Where do you remember where they took you? Like, did they put you in a room? Were you?
We went into an interrogation room. The first time I went and gave a statement at the Sheriff's Department after David died, I was in a nice little interview room. I was not in an interview room this time. I was in an interrogation room. It was a very small room. It had 2 chairs in it, and there was a black window behind me where I sat.
And where did you end up? Well, I should say, where did Detective Spinelli sit?
I sat up against the window, and Detective Spinelli sat across from me.
And do you know about what time it was that you got down into that room?
I think it was about 11 o'clock.
And was Detective Brogan in the room?
No, she was not.
And do you know how long you spent in that room?
Approximately 3.5 hours.
Was Detective Spinelli the only person asking you questions?
Yes, he was.
Now, we've heard some testimony about Detective Spinelli asking you questions and mentioning things that you had previously told law enforcement 2 years prior. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Did Detective Spinelli ever show you your statement from the years before?
No, he did not.
Did you ask him?
Not initially. When there came a point of the conversation where he said that I said something else and he could prove it, that I didn't say that information wasn't the same as what I had given before, it was different than my statement. I asked him to show me my statement, show me in my statement where that information was.
Did he ever show you?
No, he did not.
Did they ever read you your rights?
Yes, they did.
And at what point did they read you your rights?
When we first went into the room.
And once they read you your rights, what did you think was going on?
At that point, I really didn't know. I figured it was just a procedure that they were going to do, and they needed to do it, and we were talking about an investigation, so it kind of made sense.
Now, at some point, Detective Spinelli asked you about discrepancies in your statement about where you made that, not the 911 call, but the call to the police. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember what you told Detective Spinelli about where you made that call?
I told him I made it from the shop.
Now, when you were talking to Detective Spinelli, do you remember if he was had a tape recorder or anything?
No, he did not. Not that I could see. There was nothing visible in front of me. There wasn't a video camera or a recording device out in the open where I could see it.
And were there other things that Detective Spinelli seemed to focus in on when he was asking you questions?
He started asking me to tell him about the events of the weekend. And I started to talk about Friday, and he would skip ahead and say, he would say something about an event that happened on Sunday, but it didn't really happen on Sunday. It would happen on Saturday, but he would talk like it was Sunday. He had pictures of different things. At one point, he had pictures of, well, the picture that's been entered into evidence of the two glasses sitting on the coffee table or the nightstand.
Let me ask you this: did he ask you questions about when David fell down?
Yes, he did.
And did he seem to have a problem with what you were telling him?
Yes.
What did you tell Detective Spinelli about when David fell down?
That day?
That day, when you were speaking to the detective.
I had said that I thought I had been sitting on the couch in the living room and heard David fall and went into the bedroom. And
do you know what, did he tell you what his problem was with what you were saying?
He said that's not what I said had happened 2 years ago.
What did you say?
I asked him to show me my statement.
Did he?
No, he did not.
Now, while Detective Spinelli was asking you these questions, did he stay seated in the chair the whole time?
No, he did not.
What did he do?
He started way across the other room when he first started speaking in his chair. He kept moving closer and closer and closer toward me. At one point, he stood up and was walking back and forth between his chair and back beside me. And then when he finally sat down again, he came within inches of me and leaned right in to speak to me.
What was his tone of voice like?
He was yelling at times. He would go from yelling really loud to almost a whisper.
Did he ask you about telephone calls?
Yes, he did.
And what did he ask you?
He asked me if I remembered making telephone calls, and I said yes, that I had. And this is Monday while I was at the shop. He asked me what numbers I called, and I told him I had called the cell phone, but the cell phone was off. He asked me if I called the house number, and I said that I had. And he asked me how many times I had done it, and I said I really wasn't sure. He asked me if it could have been every hour or every couple of hours, and I said, yeah, I guess it could have been. And then he asked me if it was every hour. I said possibly. He said, well, maybe it was maybe it could have been every half hour to 45 minutes, maybe. I said, it could possibly be. And then he said, well, that's not true. You're lying because you only called once.
What did you say?
I said, I want to see. He said, I have the phone records to prove it. I said, I'd like to see those phone records.
Did he show you the records?
No, he did not.
Now, when this meeting with Detective Spinelli first started, what was the tone? How was the tone?
Well, at first it seemed to be a friendly kind of, we were just going to sit down. He was going to ask me a couple of questions. I was going to sign some paperwork, and I was going to go. That didn't stay that way for very long.
How did the tone change?
It became very aggressive, very accusatory. I definitely felt that I was being interrogated.
Now, again, how long do you think it took before the tone changed from sort of cordial to less than cordial?
It only took a matter of minutes for it to escalate, and then once he got to where it wasn't so cordial, it stayed that way.
Did you raise your voice with him at all?
No, I did not.
Did you argue with him at all?
I wouldn't necessarily call it arguing, but when he made a comment and I didn't agree with it, like when I asked him to show me his proof, he would say something, I say, well, show me where it says that in my statement, and he wouldn't.
Now, we've heard a great deal of testimony about this word anti-free. Tell us about how that word came up in this interrogation?
Okay. It didn't come out until the end, so I had been in the room with Detective Spinelli at least a couple of hours by then. And definitely the tone of this interrogation was getting very ugly, at least in my opinion. At one point, Detective Spinelli had the picture of the two glasses, and he was holding it in front of him.
Can you describe I don't have that exact picture, but is it one of the ones we've seen at this trial?
Yes, it's the picture with the two tumblers on it. One has the green liquid in it, and one has a residue in the bottom of it. That picture.
What was he doing with the picture?
He was holding it in front of me, and he was sitting very close to me. And the way he was, the way he was holding it in front of him, his finger was like pointing at the glass with the antifreeze in it, and he actually was pointing at this glass, asking me questions about those glasses, but he was only pointing to the one glass that had the antifreeze in it.
Now, did you say the word antifreeze?
I started to say antifreeze. I stopped myself and said cranberry juice. I did not say antifree as a word. I started to say it and stopped my conversation.
Now, I've noticed when you've been testifying today, you use the word antifreeze. Other than that time in that interview room, do you remember whether or not you'd ever used that word before?
Never.
And at this point, how much longer did the interview continue?
It stopped shortly after that. When I said that, I said, you're trying to confuse me. I want to talk to my lawyer. I'm done.
Did he say anything to you? Did he say anything else to you about what you might have tried to do to David?
No. Before I ended the interview, when he was standing up by me, he lowered his voice. He had been very loud, and then he kind of lowered his voice, and he said, we've heard a lot of talk about domestic abuse. He said, and it's not just physical abuse. There's emotional and mental abuse, and that kind of seems to fit the pattern with what we know about David. And he said, maybe you just wanted to make him sick. Maybe you didn't really want to hurt him.
What did you say?
I said, what? I said, I didn't do this to David. I love David very much.
At this point, what did you think had happened to David?
At that point, they obviously think that somebody killed him if they're accusing me of...
Non-responsive.
Stacey, I'm asking you what you...
I'll sustain it, but rephrase it.
Stacey, I'm asking you what you... Up at this point, what did you think had happened to David?
Up until this point, what
Yes.
did I believe? I believe that David had committed suicide.
Now, did the detectives allow you to leave the room?
I told them that the interview was done. Detective Spinelli got up and walked out of the room. He said he would be back in a few minutes. I stayed in the room, and I really kind of couldn't leave because they had taken my purse before they brought me in. So I had to wait for them to come back and get me. A few minutes passed by, and he came in and got me, him and Detective Brogan.
About what time was it you got home?
Between 3 and 3:30. And I didn't go home. They took me to Mike Oxner's house.
And who's Mike Oxner?
My boyfriend.
And around this time, how long before this had you met him?
Mike?
Yes.
About 3
Mike
months.
Oxner.
Mike Oxner?
There's a lot of Mikes. Let's say Mike Oxner.
About 3 months.
And were you dating him for that whole 3 months?
Yes.
And so the detectives took you back to Mike Oxner's. Where did you go from there?
I stayed at Mike's house.
Did you call anyone or talk to anyone?
I talked to Ashley.
And do you remember what you told her?
I told her that I had been, she already knew that I was being questioned by the detectives regarding David's death. I told her that I actually was talking to her while I was in the car. They were bringing me back to Mike's house, the detectives.
What did you tell her?
Just that I was fine, that they were asking me some questions, and I would talk to her when I got home.
Now, you're aware that it was around this time that the police were wiretapping your telephones.
I wasn't then, I am now.
Now, today, if I asked you to recount the exact words you said in one of those telephone conversations, could you tell me exactly what you said?
No.
And again, this all happened on which day of the week?
Friday, September 7th.
Now, over the next few days, did you have conversations with Lynn and Danny about what had happened?
Yes. And
Do you remember how many conversations you might have had?
well, I talked to Lynn several times throughout the day that day.
Just slow it down just a little bit.
Okay. In fact, when I went to take a shower before we left the house, Detectives Spinelli and Brogan, while I was taking a shower, went to Dunkin' Donuts to get some coffee, and they weren't back when I was done, so in the interim I had called my girlfriend Lynn to tell her what was going on. That night, Michael and I went over to Danny's and Mike's house, to the Coleman's house, and I was talking to Danny about it. I hadn't seen the girls yet. I stayed at Mike's that night. We had had quite a bit to drink at Danny's and Mike's house. When I got home on Saturday, I sat down and talked to the girls.
And what did you tell them?
That they were investigating David's death, that they were treating it like it wasn't a suicide anymore, and that they had taken me in and questioned me.
Now, at some point, did you find out that your first husband, Michael, had been exhumed?
I found that out Monday mid-morning from Danny and Lynn.
And do you know what the date was on Monday?
The 10th.
Did Detective Spinelli tell you about Michael?
No,
when
he did
interviewed
not.
You?
No, he did not.
Now, again, you said you had various conversations in person with Lynn and Danny. Did you have conversations with them also on the telephone?
Yes, I did.
And did you talk about what was going on?
Yes.
And do you remember exactly what you'd said to them or what they said to you?
No.
Do you know generally what it was that you said?
That weekend,
Yes.
that, they were investigating David's death. Probably talked about how unhappy I was or how pissed off I was about it.
Now, you said on Monday you found out that Michael Wallace had been exhumed.
Yes, I did.
And you said you found out from Danny Coleman?
I found out from Danny Coleman and Lynn Pulaski. I don't know which one of them called me first, but they both called me within a matter of minutes of each other to tell me that detectives from the sheriff's department had been at their places of business and told them that they exhumed Michael's body.
And what was your reaction to that?
I couldn't believe it. I didn't believe that they actually exhumed Mike's body. I said that they were lying. There was no way that that happened.
What did you do anything about it? Did you talk to anybody about it?
Michael Oxner and I drove out to Owasco Rural Cemetery to see if Michael had been exhumed.
And was he?
Yes, he was.
Did you have any conversations with Ashley or Bree about what had happened with Michael?
Monday night I didn't go home. Mike and I stayed at a hotel. Tuesday morning I met with you. Tuesday afternoon when I got home, I sat Ashley down and told her about what had happened with her dad.
Now, well, let's talk about Tuesday.
Okay?
You said you spent the night somewhere else on Tuesday?
No, Monday night we spent
Monday.
it. Yes.
Okay. And you spend the Tuesday night, or I should say from Monday night into Tuesday, was that at your house?
I went home Tuesday afternoon after I had met you in your office.
And just so we're clear, had you spent that night before at home?
No, Monday night I stayed at a hotel.
Okay. And when you got home, Do you know about what time it was that you were home?
I'm sorry, this is Tuesday now?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. It was early afternoon.
Were you home alone?
No, Ashley was home.
Did she come home with you, or was she there when you got there?
She was there when I got there.
And did you talk to her about what was going on?
Not immediately. She was, she was working on her home, no, not her homework. She was doing something at that moment, and I don't know exactly what it was. A little later on in the afternoon, I was actually going to wait until her sister came home and tell them both, but I couldn't. I took Ashley out in the sunroom. We were both having a cigarette, and I told her that her father had been exhumed.
Now, over the course of that day or around that day, we've heard wiretaps about you talking about looking for records at your mother's house. Could you tell us about that?
That was on Wednesday.
Okay.
I had met with you Tuesday morning. We were supposed to meet again either Wednesday or Thursday. You wanted to talk to the girls. And I wanted to get together the information that I had regarding Michael's death and some information that I had regarding David's death to bring to you.
And where did you go and what did you do to get those records?
Well, the information on David's death I had at my house. There was some letters and some files on my computer and hard copies of different documents. The file that I had for Michael, when Michael passed, we were living in an apartment and I didn't really have any place safe to keep the records. I thought I had given them to my mother to hang on to for me. So I called. My mom was out of the country at the time. Her and her husband went to Scotland on vacation. But his sister was staying at my parents' house sitting and sitting for them. And I called Marion that morning and asked her if she was going to be around, that I needed to come down and look in Mom's desk for a folder that had some information about Michael in it.
Did you find that folder?
No, I did not.
And that was on Wednesday, you said?
Yes, it was.
And you said you had David's information at the home.
Yes.
When were you looking for that?
Tuesday afternoon after I saw you.
And were you alone at the house when you were doing this?
No, Ashley was home.
Now, let's focus back in on Tuesday.
Okay.
Were you ever on the computer on Tuesday?
Tuesday afternoon, yes. I was looking up letters that I had written, some information about the corporate taxes, letters that I had written about that. And I went through the binder that I kept about all the estate stuff.
Do you remember exactly what time that was?
It was shortly after I got home, but before I talked to Ashley, so I think it was sometime around 2:30 or 3 o'clock.
Now, if you remember, we've heard testimony from Ashley that at some point you had asked her to come from her room into the living room, and you were working on the computer at that time. Do you remember her testimony about that?
Yes.
Is that what happened? Did it happen that way?
I didn't ask her to come into the living room. I was on the computer trying to find the information that you had requested of me so that when we met the next time I would have it available. I was on the computer, but I didn't call her into the living room.
Were you talking to Ashley about anything, if you recall?
She came into the living room and sat down on the couch and started watching TV.
Do you remember what was on?
Probably MTV, knowing Ashley.
And for about how long did this last, that you two were in the room together?
I finished up what I was doing because I couldn't find the specific thing that I was looking for, and I logged off the computer. And then shortly, within a few minutes is when I took her out into the sunroom, and we were smoking, and I told her about Michael.
And at some point in that day, did Bree come home?
Yes.
What time was that?
Bree got home About 3 o'clock, a little after.
And by the way, when you were talking to Ashley, how did she take this news?
She took it really hard. She got very angry and very vocal. She was screaming that it was inhumane and it wasn't fair, and, you know, why'd they have to dig up her dad, and it didn't make any sense.
Did you try to calm her down?
Well, yeah, I did. You know, I told her I couldn't explain to her why it had been done. Her dad didn't, you know, he didn't feel it, and that, you know, he was put back to rest, and we would go up to the cemetery if she wanted to.
Now, after Bree got home, what happened?
I told Bree about her dad.
And how did she take it?
She took it hard, not as hard as Ashley did. She cried. She was upset. But she did. It was a different kind of response. Hers was more a sorrowful, being sorry, you know, than being angry.
And did you all spend the rest of the day or the afternoon together in the house?
I believe so.
Did anyone else come over?
Mike Oxner.
Do you know about what time he got there?
I'm not sure. Right.
Do you know if anyone else came over?
I believe Matt Gandino did, and I believe that Joshua Lee did.
Okay, and who's Matt Gandino?
Matt Gandino is Ashley's boyfriend.
And how long had you known him?
How long have I known Matt? At that point, almost 2 years.
And how'd you get along with him?
I liked Matt. Matt was one of the few kids that Ashley ever brought home that I truly liked. He was respectful. He was polite. He was a nice kid. I liked Matt a lot.
Do you remember, or do you know of a person named Mike Leshinski?
Yes.
And who was he?
He was Ashley's boyfriend in high school.
And what was your relationship like with him?
I didn't have a relationship with Mike. I did not like him at all.
Now, and Josh, who is Josh?
Joshua is Breland's boyfriend.
Now, at some point you said that Tuesday night, all these folks were all together in the house?
At some point over the course of the night, I'm sure they all were there.
Did you all have dinner together?
I don't remember if we had dinner together on Tuesday night or not. I know we did together on Wednesday night, but I'm not sure if we did on Tuesday night.
Now, getting back to Matt and Ashley, was it common for Matt to come over?
Matt, yeah, a couple of nights a week, Matt would spend the night, and Ashley would spend the night a couple of nights a week over at his house. Matt would come and pick Ashley up and take her to his Pee-wee football. I think it's called Pee-wee. He was a coach for a football team, and she would go to his practices with him. And then they would come back to the house after. Sometimes they would spend the night at my house. Sometimes Matt would go home. Sometimes she would go with him.
Now, why would you allow Matt Gandino to spend the nights at your house?
Ashley was 20 years old. Matt was 18. And I felt I would rather have my daughter in my house where I know she was safe than out somewhere, God knows where, in danger.
How often would Matt stay over?
Maybe 1 or 2 nights a week. Sometimes, you know, he'd stay 3 nights. Sometimes he'd stay 1. Sometimes he wouldn't stay any. And that was a relatively new development, him spending the night. Back in April, Ashley went on vacation with the Gandinos to, I think they went to Virginia Beach. They went someplace south for a week during spring break. And I didn't know it until she came home, but they had slept in the same bed together. His parents allowed that. And, you know, Ashley's an adult. She can make her decisions. As long as Matt's mother was okay with it, I really didn't have much to say about it. So it was kind of a unspoken agreement between the Gandinos and myself that as long as it was okay with each other, the kids could spend the night at each other's houses, and they slept in the same beds.
Okay, let's move on to Wednesday. Or I'll ask it this way. Do you know which day of the week was Ashley's first day of school?
Wednesday.
Okay. And do you know what time it was that she went to school?
I believe Matt took her to school at 8 o'clock in the morning.
And was this the usual way? I mean, well, it was her first day, I guess, but was that planned?
Yes, Matt was going to take her, and I was going to pick her up.
And do you know what time she got out of school?
It was about 3:15 or so. I had just picked Bree up from her bus stop, and we were heading to go get Ashley, so it was about 3:15, 20 after 3.
And was this the day that you had gone to your mother's house looking for the records?
Yes, it was.
And if you remember, I'll ask you this. Do you remember whether or not you had used the computer that day?
My computer?
Your computer.
I do not remember offhand if I did or not.
I'll ask you this. With the computer, was it, where was the computer?
In the living room?
And were there any rules about who could use it or access or anything like that?
Kids could use it anytime they wanted.
And how often would the kids use the computer?
Sometimes they'd go days without touching it. Sometimes you couldn't get them off of it. They downloaded their music on it. They did MySpace on it. They watched YouTube. They played games. So no more or less than any other kid uses a computer.
Now, if you recall, we heard another recording of a wiretap of a conversation where you were speaking to Danny Coleman. Do you remember that particular wiretap? It's the one where the detective indicated that he could hear the
Oh,
clicking.
typing, yes.
Do you remember that conversation?
Yes.
And do you know, I'll ask it this way, do you know whether or not you were typing at that time?
No, I was not.
Now, on Wednesday, you said that you went to pick up Bree from school. What time was that? I'm sorry, Ashley.
Wednesday? It was about 3:15, 20 after 3, because I had just picked Bree up from her bus stop.
So you had both girls with you?
Yes.
And then what did you do?
We were supposed to meet with you. So we headed into Syracuse, went to the parking garage that I parked at for work, and we waited, I don't know, about a half an hour for you to call. And at that half an hour mark, I called, and your secretary had said that you were tied up in court, and unfortunately you weren't going to be able to keep your appointment.
Where did you go from there?
We went home.
When you got home, was anyone else there?
It was just the four of us.
You said the four of us. Which four?
Michael Oxner, myself, Ashley, and Bree.
Had Michael Oxner come with you downtown?
Yes, he did.
And if you know, about what time was it that you got home?
Probably around 7 or so, maybe a little before. Mike and Bree stayed at the house. Ashley and I went to Wegmans.
And did you have dinner together?
Yes. Well, I was going to Wegmans. Mike called and ordered pizza and wings.
And did you all have dinner together?
Yes, we did.
And did any other people come over the house?
Josh came over for a little while, and then later, around 10, maybe a little after 10, because he was at work, Matt came.
Now, all these folks are in the house. Did everybody stay together, or were people?
No. We don't smoke in the house, so you either had to go outside or out into the sunroom. Mike and I, it was a nice night. Mike and I were out on the porch quite a bit, smoking. The kids were in and out because both Ashley and Matt smoke. So there were people in and out of the house at any given time. We didn't all stay like in the living room together, or all in the sunroom together, or all on the porch together. People were at different places at different times.
Now, did you buy any Smirnoff watermelons that day?
Yes, I did.
Why?
I was very proud of Ashley for finally, and I emphasize finally, getting enrolled into school. Ashley was pretty much a lost soul for a little while after she graduated. She graduated in June of 2005 and worked at Wendy's, and that was Ashley's life. She'd go to work, she spent time with her boyfriend, and that was about it. And I had tried for a while to get herself enrolled in college, to put some direction in her life. I don't really know if it was the fact that Matt graduated and he was enrolled in college. I don't know if it was finally she got sick of listening to me nag. I don't know if it was the Gandino's influence, but finally she filled out the paperwork, she made the phone calls, she got her financial aid, and she got herself into school, which was a huge accomplishment for Ashley. So we were celebrating her first day of school.
How often did you let Ashley drink?
Not very often. It wasn't a common practice in my house.
Now, did you give Ashley any of the Smirnoff watermelon?
I came out of the kitchen, I handed her a bottle of Smirnoff, and Michael and I each had a beer.
We've heard some testimony about a large pink cup of Smirnoff. Did you ever give her a cup like that?
No.
Do you ever remember her or seeing her with something like that?
No.
Do you know how many of these Smirnoff watermelons that Ashley drank?
I believe 5.5.
Why do you say that?
She let her sister have half of one and she drank all the others.
How do you know?
She had said she drank them all. And she drank them relatively quickly.
Now, about what time, if you remember, do you think she started drinking?
She had her first wine cooler before Matt came, so it had to be about 9:30, 10 o'clock, somewhere around in there.
And do you know what time it was that she went to bed?
10:30, 11 o'clock.
At some point, did Bree's boyfriend Josh leave?
Yes.
Do you know when that was?
Josh left 9:30, 10 o'clock, somewhere
Did you
around
take him
there.
home?
No, I did not.
Do you know who did?
I believe Mike did.
Mike, you mean Mike Oxner?
Yes.
Do you remember whether or not, or I should say, did Ashley get sick that night?
Yes, she did.
Can you tell us about that?
I had been out in the sunroom cleaning up, and I came in and Ashley was sitting on the floor in the bathroom with her head on the toilet. She had thrown up. Apparently she was drinking, she drank a big glass of cold water
I know
fast.
that.
She told me she did. I asked her why she was throwing up. She said she threw up water because she had drank a big glass of water.
And did you do anything for her?
No, I told her she probably just drank too much too fast, and she drank the water way too fast, and she got up and got in her bed.
And if you remember, we've heard testimony from Ashley that you gave her a pink pill, an Ambien. Did you do that?
No, I did not.
Did you have a prescription for Ambien?
Yes, I did.
How long had you had the prescription?
A couple of months.
And if you remember, describe what the Ambien looked like.
They're very small tablets, but they look like little capsules, and they're white.
The rest of that night, or I should say, did you see Ashley again that night?
She went and got in bed and closed her door, and her and Matt went to sleep. I went to bed.
Do you know what time that was?
11, 11:30, somewhere around in there.
Why don't you come up for a minute?
20 after 7, 7:30.
And did you come right home?
Yes, I did.
And when you got home, who was there?
Mike Oxner, Matt Gandino, and Ashley.
And we've heard some testimony about whether Matt Gandino was going to stay around or stick around the house that morning. Can you tell us about that?
Apparently, it was a common thing for Matt to come back to the house and stay there and go back to bed at my house after he had dropped Ashley off at work or whatever. I was not aware of that, so when Ashley asked me if Matt could come back and go to bed, I said, no, you can go home. I have things to do this morning.
How did you not know that Matt would come back?
I would be at work. I left for work at 7 o'clock every morning.
But did you go to work this day?
No, I did not.
And so when you got back and had this conversation with Ashley, was Matt there?
Yes, he took Ashley to school.
And what time was that?
A little before 8 or a little after 8. It was right around 8 o'clock.
And were you in the house alone at that point?
No, Mike Oxner was there.
And what were you two doing?
Mike was sleeping. I was doing stuff around the house.
Do you remember what you were doing?
Picking up the house, straightening things up, throwing some laundry in.
At some point, did Ashley come back?
No, I went and picked Ashley up
Where did you pick her up?
at Bryan and Stratton.
And do you know what time that was?
I believe it was like 10:15.
Did you make any stops or anything on the way?
On the way to pick her up.
Or on the way back?
On the way back, she was hungry, so Mike took her to McDonald's.
You were all together at this point?
Yes.
Did you make any other stops?
On the way home, no.
And about what time was it you got back?
Back home, probably 10:30, 10:45.
And what time did Mike leave?
I want to say he was gone by 11:30.
Do you know where he went?
He went back to his house. He had some things to take care of at home.
And Ashley and you were together in the house?
Yes.
And what were you and Ashley doing?
I was still cleaning up around the house. Ashley sitting around watching TV. I went to the store. Ashley came with me. I stopped at the liquor store and got a bottle of Absolute. I went to the PNC right next door and got some Sprite and some orange juice.
Why did you do that?
Michael and I and the Colemans had talked about going out on Friday night and going to the Texas Roadhouse for dinner and then staying at one of the motels across the street on Erie Boulevard.
Why would you do something like that?
We were going to get drunk and have a good time.
Was that something you'd done before?
Yeah, we had drinks together before and gone out to dinner before, done things like that as couples.
Who was the Absolute for?
Me and Danny.
And when you got home, what did you do with the bottle?
I put it in the freezer.
Why?
That's where I kept it,
Why'd you keep it in the freezer?
because it tastes better when it's cold.
About what time was it when you got home?
About 12:30, I think.
And can you describe what was Ashley doing, or what was her demeanor like?
She said that she had a headache and her stomach was upset. I was still picking up, doing things. I went downstairs to do some laundry. I was sorting laundry and folding things, and Ashley had yelled down that she had a headache and she was going to go lay down.
About what time was this?
Probably between 1 and 1:30.
Now, we've heard testimony about from Ashley about you giving her a large drink with Absolute, orange juice, Sprite, and that it tasted horrible. Did you ever give her a drink like that?
No, I did not.
Did you ever give her any drink with Absolute in it?
No, I did not.
Now, you said Ashley went to her room at about 1:30,
Yes.
and did you see her again, or I should say, did you see her come out of her room the rest of that afternoon?
No.
Was that unusual, or was that strange?
No.
Why not?
Ashley and Bree both had TVs and stereos and Xboxes and PlayStations in the room. It was not uncommon for them to spend entire weekends in the room if they didn't have anywhere to go or anything to do. Ashley could come home at 9 o'clock on a Friday night and sleep until 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon if she didn't have to get up. So I didn't think anything of it. She didn't feel good. She had drank too much the night before, obviously, and she went and laid down.
At some point later in the day, did anyone else come over the house?
Mike came over.
Mike Oxner?
Yes.
And what time was that?
About 3, maybe a little after 3.
And did anyone else come over?
Bree came home from school, and her boyfriend Josh was there waiting for her to get home.
And what was going on? Just tell the jury, give them an idea of what everyone was doing, what was going on in the house that afternoon.
I was doing laundry, doing housework, things that needed to be done. I was getting paperwork together for Chuck. Mike stopped at McDonald's on his way to my house and got me something to eat. He also got something for Bree. Bree was getting ready to go to work.
Where did Bree work?
She got a job at Wendy's earlier that summer. Bree was getting ready to go to work. Mike took Bree to work, and I believe he dropped Josh off at his house too, because Josh just lived down behind us in the housing development.
Did Mike Oxner come back?
Yes, he did.
And did he come back by himself?
Yes, he did.
Did anyone else come over?
Not until later in the evening.
What time?
About 5:30.
Now, in between that time we just mentioned, 5:30, what were you and Mike Oxner doing?
Watching TV.
Remember what it was you were watching?
Harry and the Hendersons.
Was it a tape, or were we watching was it on cable?
On cable.
Where were you watching it?
We were laying on the couch in the living room.
At any time before 5:30, did you go up and check on Ashley?
At one point in the afternoon, I'm not exactly sure what time. I think it was even before Bree got home. I had walked past her bedroom and I could hear her phone vibrating on her floor. I went in and I picked it up, and it was Matt. And he asked what Ashley was doing. I told him that she was sleeping. She said she didn't feel good. He said he was going to come over. I told him don't bother because she was sick. She didn't feel good when she laid down, and I would have.
Was that the phone call that we heard played?
Yeah. No, because that was on Ashley's cell phone.
Okay.
No, no, that's not the phone call.
So this is a different phone call.
Yes, this was on Ashley's own cell phone. Matt called her cell phone. I told him as soon as she got up, I would have her call him.
Now, where were you when you were having this conversation with Matt Gandino?
Standing right by Ashley's bedroom in the hallway on her phone.
Describe what you saw.
Ashley sleeping.
Was she under the covers? Give us an idea of what it looked like.
She sleeps on her back. She has a stuffed animal she calls Roadkill that she sleeps with under her head always. And she had her blankets pulled up on her chest, and she was asleep.
Did you notice anything unusual?
No.
How long do you think you spent in the bedroom?
Long enough to pick up the phone, tell Matt not to come over, and put the phone back on her bed.
Do you know about what time this was?
Sometime between 2 and 3 o'clock.
And after that, you left. Mike Oxner was still there, right? You left the bedroom, and Mike Oxner was still there, right?
Mike hadn't gotten there yet. That phone call happened, I think, even before Bree got home from school. Sometime between 2 and 3 o'clock. I'm not exactly sure of the time, but I don't think anybody was home.
Okay. Now, you said that around 5:30, some other people came over, or another person came over,
Mike Coleman did.
and what was he there for?
Mike was building a fence around my backyard for me.
How long have you been working on it?
I think he was he had set the posts and was now putting up the slats.
Was this something that was planned, or was it sort of spontaneous?
Mike was really busy with his own job at Atlas Fence at the time, and he would put in long hours at that job. So when he had time, he would come and work on the fence. And I think he had talked to Mike Oxner earlier in the day and said that he planned on stopping over that night to work on the fence.
So were you expecting him?
Yes, at one point Mike told me that he had spoke to Mike and that he was coming over.
And when Mike got there, where were you?
We were in the living room.
And did you stay in the living room?
No, we went outside.
And what were you doing?
I was sitting on the patio talking on the phone.
Do you remember who you were talking to?
I talked to two people, Lynn Pulaski and my brother Jamie Daniels.
And how long were you out on the patio?
Couple hours.
Did anyone else come over?
Danny Coleman.
About what time?
She came over probably between 6 and 6:30.
Was this planned or was this spontaneous?
That Danny was coming over? I didn't know Danny was coming.
And when she got there, what did you all do?
I was on the phone and she was on her cell phone, so we were talking on the phone on my patio, and the guys were working on the fence.
And at some point, Bree came home?
Mike went and picked her up.
And when you say Mike, you mean Mike Coleman or Mike Oxner?
Mike Oxner.
What time was that?
A little after 7.
And when she got back, were the Colemans still there?
Yes, they were.
And what did you all do at that point?
Bree stayed outside with us and visited until her boyfriend Josh showed up.
And what were the rest of you doing?
Just sitting out, talking, smoking cigarettes.
Did you ever go in the house?
Not until later, a little while later.
Tell us about that.
Danny had gone into the house to go to the bathroom, and I went in. It was starting to get darker. It's cooler. I went in behind her.
And what happened? What did you do?
Danny was in the bathroom. Her and Bree were talking about Danny's recent cosmetic surgery, and we all kind of got a laugh out of that. And Danny and I went back outside.
At that point, did you see, or did you yourself, or did you see anyone else check on Ashley?
No.
Was her door closed?
Yes.
Did you notice anything unusual?
No.
And you said that you and Danny went back outside?
Yes.
What did you do from there?
They were getting ready to leave. We talked a little bit longer, and then Mike and Danny left.
Around what time was that?
Probably 8:30 or 9 o'clock.
And who was home at that point?
Bree, her boyfriend Josh, they were in her bedroom. Michael Oxner, myself, and Ashley.
And or I should say, what did you do from there?
Mike and I went in and watched TV.
Where did you do that?
In the living room. Josh stayed. I think he went home before 10 o'clock. Maybe it was more like 10:30 because Bree had to go to school and had some homework. He had been working on her homework with her. I think he left about 10:30.
Did you get a call at all from Matt Gandino?
Yes, at some point, I think it was like 8:30ish. Matt called and wanted me to look in Ashley's room for his ATM card. He said,
Did you do that?
Yes, I did.
Tell us about it.
I walked into Ashley's room. Her room is incredibly small. Her dresser was just a few feet from her door. I walked over to it. There was nothing on. I looked. I asked Matt what color his ATM card was because I couldn't see anything. I looked around on the floor by her dresser. There was no card there.
Did you turn the lights on?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I didn't need to because the hall light is right outside Ashley's bedroom door. So when I opened the door, there was enough light from that hall light shining into her room.
Can you describe what Ashley was like at this time?
She was laying in her bed, still with her roadkill behind her head, curled up in her blankets.
Was she in the same position?
No, she had shifted a little bit. She had moved.
And about how long would you say you spent in that bedroom?
That phone call took what? A minute? A minute?
At some point, did you all go to bed?
Yes.
What time?
I believe it was about 11 o'clock.
And who was there at that point?
Bree, Ashley, me, and Mike Oxford.
And had Bree already gone to bed?
She was in her room, yes.
And before you went to bed, did you go and see Bree or talk to her?
Yep. I every night kissed her goodnight, tucked her in.
Did you do the same with Ashley?
That night I just peeked in. I kissed her on her forehead. I didn't speak to her. And I went into my room.
Was she in the same condition?
She was asleep, yeah.
And you said you went to bed. Can you describe to the jury what your bedroom looks like?
My bedroom?
Yes.
When you walk in my bedroom door, if you're looking straight ahead, well, you kind of angled. To the right was my dresser. At the bottom of at the foot of my bed, I had two large trunks. One was a hope chest, and one was it's an antique chest that was in my dad's family. They call it a wallpaper trunk or wallpaper chest. That was at the foot of the bed, and my comforter was folded down over the bottom of the bed. My bed and my nightstand, and then the entrance into my bathroom.
Now, can you describe to the jury where did you sleep in the bed?
The bed was pushed right up against the wall. I slept on the inside by the wall.
And who slept on the outside?
Michael.
How often would Michael stay over?
Quite regularly. He had clothes there. He had his toothbrush there. He didn't receive his mail there yet, but short of that, lived there.
Now, you said that you went to bed. Did you go to sleep at that point?
No,
What did you do?
we had sex.
And was that right after you went to bed?
Yeah.
And at some point, did either you or Michael leave that bedroom after that?
I did.
Where did you go?
To the bathroom.
Why?
So I had to go to the bathroom.
Why didn't you use the one that was attached to the bedroom?
I never used that bathroom.
Why not?
I never had. I didn't like the bathroom.
You say you didn't like it. What do you mean you don't like it?
The toilet was very low to the floor. I never used that bathroom. I did not like it. And when you flush the toilet in the middle of the night in that little bathroom, you hear it like it's right next to the bed. So I always went into the main bathroom.
And do you know about what time it was that you went to the bathroom?
About 1 o'clock.
And did Mike stay in the bedroom?
Yes, he did.
Was he awake when you went to the bathroom?
I woke him up.
How?
I had to crawl over him to get out of the bed.
And about how long were you in the bathroom before you came back?
A couple minutes. Long
And
enough.
Did you see Ashley or Bree at that time?
I looked in on both of them. It's a habit that I've had since they were babies.
And what did you see?
Both of them sleeping.
And did you go back to bed?
Yes, I did.
Did you get up again that night?
Not until 6:30 the next morning.
Do you know if Mike Oxner got up that night again?
I don't think so.
I said you got up at 6:30. What happened?
At 6:30, I heard Bree scream, "Mommy, there's something wrong with Sissy." And Mike and I were immediately out of bed and into Ashley's bedroom.
And were you asleep at the time when Bree came in?
Yes, but Bree didn't come in my bedroom. She stood outside the door and yelled.
And what did you do?
I got up and went into Ashley's bedroom.
What did you see? Tell the jury.
Ashley was laying in her bed, but she was turned around. Her head was actually at the foot of her bed, and she was facing toward her head was turned toward the wall, away from us. She was staring, and her eyes were fixed on something, but she really wasn't seeing anything, and she was making like a gurgling noise.
What did you think was going on?
I didn't know. I knew something wasn't right. I called her name. I tried to shake her, and she didn't give any response. I immediately went to get the phone to call 911.
Who else was in the bedroom at this time?
Michael and Bree.
What were they doing?
Talking to her, trying to get her to respond.
You said you got your phone. Did you call 911?
Yes, I did.
And that was the phone call that we heard played?
Yes, it is.
Could you tell us what you were doing while that was going on?
I was in the bedroom so I could see what was going on with Ashley, so I could tell the 911 operator what was happening with her. At some point, Bree picked up an Absolute vodka bottle and handed it to me, and I put it on Ashley's dresser.
Where was Mike Oxner at this point?
He was on the bed with Ashley,
What was he doing?
talking to Ashley, trying to get her to come around. He had her turned on her side, and when she started to vomit, he turned her head so that she didn't choke.
How are you feeling at this point?
Me, I was pretty hysterical.
What happened next?
Ashley did vomit. It felt like forever for that ambulance to get there. They sent me out to go open the door, and you can hear on the tape I couldn't get the door unlocked. I couldn't get it opened. It finally opened. The ambulance arrived, and they went into the bedroom. Now, the area where the bedrooms and the bathroom and the hallway are is very, very small. They could not get the stretcher into Ashley's bedroom. So we all were forced out. Me and Bree and myself were told to leave the area because there was a police officer, Mike Oxner, and a couple of paramedics in there trying to work on Ashley at the time. So Bree and I went into the dining area.
And you said that Bree found a bottle of Absolute.
Yes.
Did anyone else find anything in that room?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
There was a bottle of Ambien, my Ambien, in the room. I believe Mike found that on the bed and handed it to me.
What did you do with it? Do you remember?
I put it on the dining room table.
Do you remember if was that the same thing the same bottle you were talking to 911 about?
Yes.
Did anyone find anything else?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Bree found what we thought was Ashley's suicide note on the bed.
Can you describe the circumstances of how that happened?
She picked the note. Apparently it had been under Ashley's pillow. When the pillow was moved, she found the note. She took the note, started to read it, and screamed, "Oh my God, Mommy," and handed me the note. I was on the phone, still with 911 when that happened.
Did you read the note at that point?
I very briefly skimmed the beginning of it.
At this point, what did you think was going on?
At that point, from what I saw of Ashley and what I read on this note, I thought my daughter had tried to commit suicide.
And how did that make you feel? What were you thinking at that point?
That was probably one of the most devastating moments in my life.
What happened next?
The ambulance arrived. They worked on Ashley. They got her on the stretcher and they took her out and into the back of the ambulance.
Was anyone asking you questions?
Yes.
Who?
I don't know. I don't remember his name, but it was a Town of Calais police officer. He had on a brown uniform.
Did you talk to any of the paramedics?
No. They grabbed Ashley and they ran.
You said that you and Bree and Michael were asked or taken out of the room so that the paramedics could fit in there. Where did you go?
Mike stayed in there to help lift her out of the bed. Bree and I went into the dining room.
And what happened in the dining room?
There was a police officer that was talking to me, asking me questions, who we were, what was going on, our ages, that kind of stuff.
What happened next?
They took Ashley out of the house.
Did you actually see that?
Yes, I watched them put her in an ambulance.
And at this point, were there other police officers who had arrived?
Yes. I don't know how many. There were people all over the place at the time. At one point, Bree and I had moved into the living room, and we were sitting on the couch. Mike had brought one of the police officers, I don't know if it was a detective or not, one of the police officers had asked if there was a note, because apparently they were notified by 911 that there was a note. They asked if they could see it. At that time, I had no idea where it was. Michael Oxner went and got it and brought it to me. I started to read it and, again, couldn't get very far when I saw what it said. I folded it up and I put it back on the I put it on the table in front of me. At that point, Bree grabbed it and started reading it, which really bothered me because I kind of got the gist of what the letter said, and I did not want her reading it.
What did you do?
I asked one of the police officers to take it away from her.
Did they?
Yes, they did.
What happened next?
Several police officers showed up. Detective Valerie Brogan showed up. We were getting ready to go to the hospital when Detective Brogan came in. My brother showed up at the same time, and I asked him to please stay at the house.
Did you have any conversations with any of the detectives who arrived?
The last detective I talked to was the one that the last police officer I talked to was the one that I asked to take the letter from Bree.
How did you get to the hospital?
We drove.
When you say we, who's we?
Michael drove me and Bree.
Which hospital?
Upstate Memorial.
Do you know about what time it was you arrived?
Sometime between 7 and 7:30.
Well, this way, did you try to get there as fast as you could?
Yes.
What happened when you got to the hospital?
We went into the ER waiting room. They had me talk to the lady that takes the information. I actually had insurance, but through her job, so I didn't have any of her information. I didn't have Ashley's Social Security card. I could only give her the basics of what I knew about Ashley. And I asked her to, she wanted me to sign a bunch of forms. I told her I wasn't going to sign anything. I would take care of everything as soon as they let me see Ashley.
Did you get to see her?
A nurse came and got me and took me in back.
Now, at this point, what was your demeanor like?
I was shaking. I was crying. I was pretty upset.
And you said that a nurse did take you to see Ashley?
Yes.
Describe what you saw.
I walked into the room, or it wasn't a room. She was in one of the curtained areas. They didn't actually have her in a room. I didn't actually get to go into the room because they had a uniformed police officer that wouldn't let me in. But I could see Ashley. She had an oxygen mask on. She had IVs. They had her actually. Her wrists were tied down. She wasn't speaking. She was writhing in the bed. And when I stepped into the room, the police officer told me I had to get out.
Did any nurses ask you any questions about medications or what had happened?
I don't know if it was a nurse that asked first or a police officer that asked first. Somebody did, though, come and ask us, what kind of medication did you have in your house? What could she have possibly taken? We told them about the Ambien bottle that we found in the bed, and I told them about the drugs that I could remember that I had in my house.
Do you remember what drugs you mentioned?
Her Ritalin, my Meridia.
What's Meridia?
Diet pills. We had, Bree had a prescription for hydrocodone, I believe, and at that time we told him about Mike's Lexapro.
When you say Mike's Lexapro, what do you mean?
Mike had a prescription for Lexapro. He had a bottle of it in the house on top of the TV.
Was it his prescription?
He has a prescription for Lexapro. The bottle that his prescription was in was one of his mother's old bottles.
Had you seen that bottle before?
Yes.
Do you remember seeing that bottle that morning?
Do I remember it that morning? No.
You said that he took Lexapro, and the bottle was on the TV. Was it normal for him to leave that bottle around the house?
When he was at the house, yeah. Actually, I picked that bottle up off of the coffee table and put it up on the TV because our Italian Greyhound likes to chew things.
Now, back at the hospital, you said you told either the law enforcement personnel or the medical personnel about what medications were in the house.
Yes.
Did anyone ask you any other questions?
We were asked to give statements.
Who asked you?
Detective or Sergeant Nolan, I believe, was the first person to ask about giving a statement. He wanted Bree to give a statement. I told Bree she didn't have to give them a statement, but she agreed that she would, and I went in the room with her, and she started to give her statement.
Did you give a statement?
I wasn't going to, but yes, I did.
Why did you do that?
Because I wanted them to be able to do whatever they had to do to find out what was going on with Ashley, and if there was a piece of the puzzle that I had, I wanted them to have it.
Do you remember what questions you were asked?
What we did the night before, what was going on in our family previous to this. Did Ashley ever threaten to commit suicide? What kinds of things were going on in her life? General questions like that.
Now, you just mentioned that question, whether or not she'd ever tried to commit suicide. Do you remember what you told them?
I said no, because at that time I did not know of any attempts that Ashley had ever made on her life.
Now, we've heard testimony from Ashley, and we've heard testimony from other witnesses regarding Ashley and either suicide or suicidal tendencies. At the time you were at the hospital, were you aware of any of that?
Object to the form of the question.
I'll state it as the form.
Before you heard that testimony, did you see anything that made you think that Ashley could commit suicide?
Seeing Ashley laying in the bed in the condition she was in made me think that she had tried to commit suicide.
I'm saying before that day. Had you seen anything in her that would make you think that?
No?
Stacey, we've been here a long time, and I suppose the most important question I have to ask you, well, at least the most important questions I have to ask you are right now. Did you kill David Castor by poisoning him with antifreeze?
No, I did not.
Did you try to murder your daughter by poisoning her with alcohol and pills and try to frame her for the murders of David Castor and Michael Wallace?
Absolutely no, I did not.
Now, Stacey, were you arrested that day?
Yes, I was.
What time?
I don't really know exactly what time it was. It was later in the afternoon.
And I assume you were taken to jail?
No, I was taken to CID.
At some point, though, you were taken to jail.
After they arraigned me, I was taken to jail about midnight.
And do you remember while you were in jail, would you have any phone conversations or would you meet with anyone while you've been in jail?
Oh, yeah.
And do you remember a phone conversation, an excerpt of it we heard earlier of a phone conversation between you and Michael Oxner? Do you remember that call?
Yes.
Judge, can we approach?
Yeah, given the length of the phone call, if you're going to...
Have you heard about the phone call at the bench, maybe?
Sure, come on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a good time to break. It's 5 to 5. We went a little longer than usual today. Why don't you come back at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning? Please don't talk about the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Don't read or listen to any media accounts about it. Don't view or visit any locations you've heard about during the trial. Don't agree to accept anything for supplying information about the case till it's over, and don't form any opinions about the way the case ought to be decided. I'll see you at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Try to stay warm.